Be seated. Calling Sanderson versus Paltrow. Looks like not quite everyone's present. As soon as you are ready for the jury, let me know. Looks like we got a binder just found ours up here. Yeah. Yeah. Ready for the jury, counsel? All right. We're ready. Thank you and good afternoon. Mr. Sanderson, would you please retake the witness stand?
Your Honor, we've made an agreement.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So because we have Deer Valley people lined up, I would like to continue my questioning of Mr. Sanderson, but at a different time.
Okay. Very good. And so who's the next witness?
Eric Christensen.
Mr. Christensen? If you could come right up here, sir.
Hi. Please raise your hand. Thanks. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. You can have a seat.
Good afternoon, sir. Just right around here, and there's the chair. And the left-hand armrest has been acting up again.
And I'm sorry, I have a cold.
Sir, one more thing. Would you please state your full name and spell all the words?
My middle name also?
Sure.
Okay. My name is Eric Paul Christensen, EricPaulChristiansen.
Let's introduce yourself. What city do you live in?
I live in Camas.
Okay, and married, kids?
I have 2 children. They're both in their 30s. I have 2 grandchildren.
And skiing has been a big part of your life, is that fair?
It has been. I've been a ski instructor for 44 years, 39 of those at Deer Valley.
And I can think of what a ski instructor is, but just comment a little further on that, would you? What is a ski instructor?
Once I came to Deer Valley, I went through both of my levels of certification. There's 3 now, but they've added 1 on the front end. But we're members of the Professional Ski Instructors of America. We happen to be in the Intermountain Division. I'm certified to teach all levels, from young kids all the way through adults, from never evers, never been on skis, through experts.
Okay, I talked to your wife. She's been in the ski industry 50 years too.
She actually receives her 50-year. She just received her 50-year level 3 pin. Yes, but during that time she spent 32 years as a patroller at Park City Mountain Resort. She was a weekend patroller.
You mentioned level 3. Is 3 good?
Yes, it used to be called associate and full, and then they changed it. They added a bronze pin at the front end, and so it went level 1, level 2, level 3, and so the former full certified is now called level 3 certified.
Sir, I'm going to ask James to show you a 20-second animation. May I do that, Your Honor?
I think we need to. Will you approach the bench?
Sure. So objection overruled?
Well, I'm holding it in abeyance right now until you show the witness the animation.
So may James approach the witness?
Sure. Or plaintiff's counsel needs to see what's being shown, you can come up here also.
So, Mr. Christensen, James is gonna run a 20-second animation for you.
Okay.
For the record, this is the number six
True.
of the animations.
There's no sound. Please tell me when it's over. Have you reviewed that?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have plaintiff's counsel go back? Will that help you explain your testimony to the jury?
Yes, it will.
Will it help explain the position of the parties at the time of the accident?
Yes.
Does it help explain your recollections of the events?
Yes, it does.
Is it substantially similar to your recollection of the events on the date in question?
Yes, it is.
So, Your Honor, I move to publish this animation to the jury as a demonstrative exhibit.
Plaintiff objects. The demonstrative is not illustrative of the witness's viewpoint, and if you wouldn't mind, Your Honor, I'd like to have another sidebar.
Okay. Okay, the motion is granted. The animation number 6 will be received for demonstrative purposes. And if the jury will recall, jury instruction number 18 addresses evidence like this. Certain charts and summaries, in this case an animation, sometimes referred to as demonstrative exhibits, will be shown to you to help explain the evidence. However, these charts and summaries, and in this case an illustration or animation, are not themselves evidence, and you will not have them in the jury room with you when you deliberate. You may consider them to the extent that they correctly reflect the evidence.
All right. Let's play the animation, and then we're going to go back and talk about it. Is this from your viewpoint?
This one would be from my viewpoint, yes.
And let's be clear, this is not a GoPro video.
No.
This is a creation. It's not an actual video, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So this is from, if you had a camera on your forehead at the time, does this sort of illustrate your testimony?
It will.
Okay. It's been admitted.
Wax Foundation.
Overruled. Go
Okay,
ahead.
let's play the video. All right, we're gonna take this kind of piece by piece. Let's go to the very beginning. Do you know the bandana run?
Very well.
How many times have you skied that?
Well, I've been at Deer Valley for 40 years, actually. I would say that the bandana run has been there for about 30 of those, and it is the only access to go directly from Flagstaff Mountain to the Empire area.
And do you recognize this, for instance, this little cabin there on the left?
Oh, yes.
What is it, a private home?
It's a private home.
Do you recognize those? And I have a little laser here, if I'm doing this right. Do you see those buckets right there?
Yeah, those are green foam tubes that cover up the snowmaking. There's water and air, or water and electric, depending on what type of system they have.
And does that provide some landmark in where this collision occurred?
It does.
Okay. Was it essentially across from them?
What do you mean?
Where the collision occurred, was that sort of across from the snow equipment?
It would be in that general area, yes.
Okay. And then there's some people here. So who's the orange, the guy in the orange?
That would represent Moses.
All right, so let's back up. Were you hired by Miss Paltrow to help Moses that day?
Yes.
And had you helped him before?
This was the third time I had skied with him, twice in the previous year, and then this trip on this year.
Would you lie for Gwyneth today?
No.
Are you testifying truthfully today?
Yes, I am.
By the way, you were called a bully this morning. Have you ever bullied a guest at Deer Valley?
Deer Valley takes their guests very seriously, and if an instructor is has a confrontation with a guest, we don't last. We are supposed to be polite to everyone, and I was polite to Mr. Sanderson that day.
And have you been polite to every guest in 40 years?
I've never had a reason not to be.
So, yes? Were you
Yes.
a bully to Mr. Sanderson?
I was not.
Is that a ridiculous claim?
I feel that it is, yes.
And you were personally named in this very lawsuit.
Your Honor.
Sustained as to relevance.
Goes to credibility, I believe,
Move
Your
to
Honor.
strike, Your Honor.
I'll follow your order.
Okay.
There's been an allegation just this morning that you stood by and yelled at an unconscious man for 2 or more minutes. Did you?
Objection, leading.
I'm asking him to comment on it.
It's a as a prefatory statement, it's fine, overruled.
Did you do that?
I did not. No one was ever unconscious during that period of time. Where do you want me to start?
Yes, it's a big story. Okay.
Okay.
Who are these 2 people on the animation?
Those would represent Apple and also Carrie Oakes, another
Okay.
instructor.
All right. So they were a little ahead. Is that fair?
They were in the proximity. I can't tell you for sure exactly where they were, but we were all in the same proximity.
And do you actually recognizing this as an animation, but does it illustrate well the geography of the actual run?
It does.
Do you know anything about like a special photographer going up and actually contouring the run?
Well, it is what I've been told. It is an actual photograph of the run.
And this was a clear day.
It was.
And that's. Do you know whether this was the actual month and day, not the year, of the actual incident itself? Like, this is literally the day, like February 26th?
Right, I was told that the other day. that
Okay, you don't personally know that?
No.
Okay. All right. The title of this image is Christensen's POV, point of view, and let's run it, and then James, I'll ask you to stop at some point. Okay, let's stop. Who is that?
That would represent Mr. Sanderson.
All right. Why is it you would look up to see someone like Mr. Sanderson?
Well, when you're working with students, especially if they're children, you're always looking around. It's very much like driving. You're aware of everything around you. The one thing this animation does not show is I actually watched him make several turns down, and that's what caught my eye. And so Mr. Sanderson has some very strong skiing skills because he was skiing edge to edge, rolling his skis. An intermediate skier skids much more, but he was skiing edge to edge, and he was making what we would refer to as GS, giant slalom turns, which basically means that they're round and large and fairly fast.
Okay. And comment on Moses's ability?
Moses, I think it was maybe his fourth time. He went to Big Bear one day, from what my understanding, and then he had skied a few days with me on one trip, a couple of days on a second trip, and this was his first day of this trip. So he did not have a lot of experience. He was 9 years old, and so he was still in a wedge, and so we were skiing very slow. We were skiing on the side of the run.
And comment on Gwyneth's skill level.
Gwyneth is a strong intermediate skier, and she was skiing skiers right while we were on skiers left. And one of the things that's interesting is that she was making short radius turns. Now, when we teach people how to be safe, one of the things that we do is we try to teach them to ski not right down the middle of the run, because that's where all the traffic is, but if they can ski a shorter radius turn on the side, that means they're in a narrower corridor. It also means that they are out of the line of traffic, and uphill skiers who are faster can watch and anticipate them and miss them. And that's what she was doing. She was actually skiing short radius turns on the skier's right next to the edge.
I did jump beyond your background. So when it's not ski season, what do you do for a living?
I also teach at the Winter Sports School. It's a high school that was set up for winter athletes. And so we start in April, and about the second week of April, and then graduation will be the week before Thanksgiving. And so the students get an academic education, but they also get 5 months off during the winter to work on their sport.
Okay. I think I mentioned that your wife is a level 3 instructor. Are you a level 3 instructor?
Yes, I am.
And is that the highest level?
It is.
And highest means most advanced.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Let's run the video just a little bit more. Okay. Let's stop. Who is? Now, say again who all these people are, would you? Who's that on the far end?
On the far end, that would be Miss Paltrow.
Okay. And let's go a little further. Now, let's stop.
Okay.
All right. Craig Ramon said when he heard a sound, he turned. Is that what you did?
Well, of course, when I heard a scream, that's when I looked back.
He's claimed to be the only eyewitness who essentially heard and turned, but you also heard and turned. Is that right?
That is correct.
And was Ramon immediately on the scene?
He was not. What happened was I had been watching Mr. Sanderson ski down, and because I was aware of my students on the side, But as soon as he passed us, I looked back at Moses, and it was a mere moments after that that we heard the scream.
All right, so whenever you say a pronoun like he,
Okay,
I'm
Mr.
gonna
Sanderson.
actually
Yeah.
ask you to
Okay.
clarify who.
Sorry about that.
All right, so just say that last sentence again, would you, with using the name?
Okay, so Mr. Sanderson was skiing down, making fairly large turns, and he had accumulated a fair amount of speed. I watched him while I was watching my kids. I was paying attention to both, and as soon as he passed us, and I wasn't concerned with him hitting us, then I turned back towards Moses, but at that point he was very close to Miss Paltrow, and I looked away. I did not actually see the collision, but I heard her scream, and that's when I looked up.
But Ramon was not on the scene for how many seconds?
I would say at least 45 seconds. I mean, Miss Paltrow was already up on her feet. We were getting Mr. Sanderson up on his feet. He was very late to the scene.
Okay.
I would just assume that he was not as fast a skier as Mr. Sanderson was.
All right, so let's be clear. Did you literally see the moment of impact?
I did not.
All right. Did you hear and turn?
I did hear, and I turned, and by that time they're already moving on the ground.
And who's on top?
Miss Paltrow is on top.
All right, and let's finish running the video if you don't mind. So is this you skiing over to them?
It is.
Is this more or less what you saw?
Pretty much. They were below me, so the first thing I did was I turned to Carrie and I said, asked her to take Moses, and I said, I'm going to go over to see what happened. And at that point, I traversed across. They were below me, and so I didn't have to skate or anything. I just
Did
I
you
went
hear Miss Paltrow say anything?
when I got there.
Paltrow, pal, like a
Miss
pal.
Yeah, okay. When I got to the scene, she was talking and a little bit upset. They were both talking. The first thing I did was I took off my skis and I moved around on would have been the right-hand side. And they both had their heads uphill. Both sets of skis were still on both she and Mr. Sanderson. And their skis were below them. And they were basically lying pretty much on their backs.
Okay. And I think Ramon said that their heads were downhill. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree.
And you even smiled. And why did you smile?
Well, for one thing, he wasn't there at that time. But no, they were, I don't know how to describe it with my arms, but, they were on the slope and she was underneath and he was on top of her.
And he also, Ramon said that Mr. Sanderson was a spread eagle pointing downhill. Did you observe that?
I never observed that.
You would have remembered that, wouldn't you have?
Well, of course.
Okay. And then when you first came over, then I heard you say Gwyneth was upset.
Yes.
Is that the first thing you heard out of their mouths?
It's been long enough. Excuse me. It's been long enough ago that I can't give you, an exact, play-by-play of who said what when. I do know certain statements were made.
Okay.
Okay.
And did you hear Mr. Sanderson say anything during the entire incident?
Oh, of course.
What were those things?
Well, at the first, he was apologizing to her.
You
And
heard that with your
I
own
did.
ears?
Yes, I did. And but when they started responding to my questions, the first thing I needed to do is get their skis off. It's very hard to get up on any slope with your skis on. A lot easier to take them off. But also, they were entwined with each other. I mean, they were kind of, tangled up with each other. And so the best thing to do was to get their skis off. That's the safest thing to do. And so she was on top, and so
Okay,
I
I think
took.
you might have said at some point Gwyneth was underneath, but she was on top. That's your testimony.
Did I? Yeah, she.
I didn't
Oh,
catch
I'm
it.
sorry.
but
Did
my-
I get that backwards?
My partner said you did. I didn't actually
Okay.
catch that. Just be clear.
Okay.
Who was on top?
She was on top.
Okay.
Mr. Sanderson was on the slope, lying down, and she was on top of him.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I
And their skis
just
were
said that.
intermixed.
And their skis were kind of tangled up with each other with their legs
Okay, first thing you did, I heard you say you removed her skis,
because she was on top. It's the only way I could do it.
okay, and help her sort of separate.
Right. And I gave her my arm and helped her up. And then I immediately went and helped get Mr. Sanderson's skis off. And then I put my arm out and helped him up also.
Did you just grab him and jerk him up onto his feet?
Of course not.
Would you do that?
That would have hurt my back. I'm too old to do things like that. No, I just simply gave him my arm to help him get up.
You heard him say what words in terms of the apology?
He said, when she was talking to him, he simply said, I'm sorry. But then he also made a statement about, she just appeared in front of me.
Okay, you remember those words?
Yes.
What does that indicate to you in terms of who was the uphill skier?
Well, what indicates that he was the uphill skier is that I witnessed him coming much faster than anybody else on the slope, coming down the hill, and I looked away mere moments before the impact. So that's number one, why he would be the uphill skier. The other thing is that it would be very difficult to be underneath her if he hadn't hit her from behind.
And explain.
Well,
Projection, foundation.
I don't know what that means.
He didn't see it.
I'll allow a,
Okay.
Instructionist.
Go ahead.
what I
Oh,
did. oh,
just a second, overruled, I think.
Okay.
He was there, his perception.
What I did see is everything leading up to it and the immediate aftermath. So I cannot speak to the actual collision, but I can speak to what I saw immediately before and the aftermath.
Right, but I think you told me at one point, like if a soccer player takes out someone's legs, they're underneath.
Yes, it would be very similar to that. It's a situation where it would be almost impossible to be in front of Miss Paltrow and then end up underneath her.
So I heard a few things, if we're trying to outline things you heard from Mr. Sanderson's own mouth. She appeared right in front of me, yes?
That is correct.
I'm sorry.
Yes. He was not real talkative, to be honest with you.
How about, did you ask him, are you okay?
I had to. That's the whole time I'm removing skis and getting ready to help them up. I'm asking, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
So the answer, did
Was
you
a-
ask him if he was okay?
I did, and he was affirmative. He said yes.
All right. And did a ski patrol duo come by?
They did. It was just a few minutes later than that. Now, by this time, Mr. Ramon has arrived on the scene, and so two patrollers are just making a ski by, and one of them came up to us and said, "Do you need any help?" And Mr. Ramon, Mr. Sanderson, spoke to each other. I was still kneeling on the snow, getting their skis ready, and whatever they said, they turned to the patroller and said, "No, we don't need help."
All right, so they talked to each other quietly out of your hearing?
That is correct.
And did you try to influence them, like, say no, say no?
Of course not.
Okay, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And what did they say? Who spoke?
Um,
Who declined help?
I would assume it was Mr. Sanderson, but they looked directly at the patroller and refused help.
All right. If they had said, I'm not okay, if Mr. Sanderson said, I am not okay, what happened? What would
That,
have happened?
that would have changed the entire situation. People on a ski slope have minor bumps and things constantly.
Objection, speculation.
Oh my,
Maybe you could rephrase the question as phrased, it is speculation.
well, what have you observed over 50, 40 some years
44 years.
with
As to vagueness.
with regard to skier collisions?
Okay.
Objection.
Sustained?
What
Okay.
have you yourself?
I can answer the original question.
So the judge sustained it, so I'm rephrasing my question.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, have you personally come across skiers who have collided before?
Yes.
And just comment on what you've observed.
If they're
Objection overbroad.
Overruled?
if they are both in a situation where they each claim they're okay, typically the two skiers part ways and ski off. If anyone is hurt, now it's a total different scenario, and patrol will have to be called. Statements will be taken. Patrol will assess how much injury there is, whether they need to be taken out in a toboggan or whatever. And so patrol takes over at that point, and we become simply witnesses.
All right. Was this important to you to know the answer to that question, whether the skier from his own mouth felt he was okay?
Well, of course, because if either skier had said, "Oh, I'm hurt, I need assistance," that would have changed everything.
Okay.
That
What-
would have, made it so we would have all stayed on the scene.
And if Mr. Ramon and Mr. Sanderson had said to the ski patrol person, "We need assistance," would
Mhm.
that have changed anything?
I would have been there the whole time. Yes.
Okay. Gwyneth testified, essentially, she said, "You just skied into my effing back." All right. Did Mr. Sanderson say anything like that?
No, he did not.
What did he say? She
He-
appeared right in front of me.
She appeared right in front of me.
You didn't know that he had a blind eye at that time.
No, I did not.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm now going to have James show an additional, just to the witness himself, an additional animation.
Wonder if we could approach the bench on that. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Mr. James is going to show you another animation. It's also about 20 seconds and also does not have sound. And this is going to be number 1, and it's from what view, James?
It's just called Looking Uphill, is the name.
Looking uphill.
Number 1.
Need to stop before
Yeah, it's lost.
Back it up to right there.
Right there. So just the first one. Stop it right there. Got it.
By the way, I wanted to introduce the fact that Deer Valley's lawyer is here. Is that true?
He
Far
is-
right. You're right.
My right. I see him.
And I don't represent you. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay.
Before we show this, maybe finish
Yes.
laying your foundation.
Let's do that, please. So you've had a chance now to review what we're going to call video number 1, okay?
That is correct.
Will that help you explain your testimony to the jury?
It will.
And will it help explain the positioning of the parties at the time of the accident?
Yes.
And if I interrupted you, go ahead.
Objection. Move to strike, that's opinion evidence.
Overruled, and so this animation will be received again for demonstrative purposes, not as evidence, but to illustrate this witness testimony.
Does it help explain your recollection of the events?
Yes.
Is it substantially similar to your recommendation or recollection of the events on the date in question?
It is very similar, yes.
So I will ask for permission now to publish this to the jury as a demonstrative exhibit.
It is received in advance for that purpose, and it'll be stopped where I've indicated to Mr. Egan to stop it.
Okay. Do you see all these people identified? The woman on the left, top left. Did you observe her? Mr. Sanderson did, but I'm doing a little laser.
Mm-hmm.
Did you personally observe that person?
I saw her, yes.
She was described by Mr. Sanderson as sort of a more beginner person that he did not want to hit.
Okay.
What do you recall?
I don't recall much because she was not a skier that I was concerned with.
Okay.
She was on the other side of the run. I did see her, but she was not skiing fast, so I really didn't pay much attention to her.
And then on this side, is there a bit of a little cliff or ridge here on
Well,
the skiers' right?
It's not a cliff, but it is a drop-off.
Right.
As most ski runs, they're created with bulldozers and machinery and to create a run, and so there's always an edge from
Okay.
the man-made
And-
feature.
And do you recognize these? Are these the snow-making equipment buckets on the right?
Right, it's basically utilities.
Okay.
Here it would be one would contain water and one would contain compressed air.
And at the top of this run, on this exhibit, is that the very top of the entire run?
Of the bandana run, yes. You can see a lift up in the upper
I see
left-hand
it.
corner.
Top
That would be
left.
the Ruby lift.
That's like
And-
if prove you're not a robot. I would have missed that actually. Okay.
Okay.
Then it says Paltrow. Is that Brown?
Okay,
Sanderson is identified in blue. Do you see that?
yes,
Christensen, is that you kind of represented?
okay, yes,
Moses is in orange under this. You with me?
yes,
Carrie Oakes, is she the instructor for Apple?
that is correct.
All right. By the way, plaintiffs asserted in their opening that Ms. Paltrow was reckless and dangerous on this hill. Did you observe that?
not at all.
All right, let's run through this from start to end, or start till the crash. So we're gonna stop right before the crash. Right there. Okay. Can we do it just a little longer to see where they're, well, let's talk to you. So when you turned your head, we wanna fast forward over that. So, you tell us, there's Gwyneth and there's Sanderson. Did you see a little bit more of this, or was this the end of what you saw?
I saw a little bit more of this, and
Can we go slow motion until he says, I want you to say stop.
okay.
The judge is the governing
Okay.
person here, but can you say stop when you no
I-
longer observe
right.
something? Is that okay, Your Honor? Thank you.
Okay. Once he was below us. Okay, so he's heading back. I would say right in there.
Okay, you
can
turned
stop.
away, and then at some point you came over, and so James, if there's a way to, were they at a complete stop when you came over?
Yes, they were.
And so, is there a way, James, to move this to when they're at a complete stop? He's gonna put it back on here.
Okay.
All right. This is you on the right, is that?
That would be correct.
And then they've now collided. They're pretty close to the edge there. Would you agree?
Yes, because as I walked around, I was actually standing below the lift, below the run slightly.
And there's the buckets right there, right?
Right, those are the tubes.
And now can we play the remainder? Thank you. And Moses is going to say he essentially followed you over. Do you have any, and heard something? I'm just wondering.
Okay.
So
All I.
Your Honor should rule.
Sustained.
Okay.
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 Did you observe Gwyneth upset?
Yes, she was upset.
Comment on that, would you?
When you're skiing, you don't expect to be taken out because that happens very fast. We cannot look behind you. Now, I'm in the habit of always looking uphill because quite often
Non-responsive.
Sustained.
Okay, just let's be a little more precise on the question. Was Gwyneth upset?
Gwyneth was upset.
And
yes.
what did you observe?
As I came across, she was speaking to Mr. Sanderson. Once again, the first things I did was ask if everyone was okay.
Did she yell at him?
I don't know that she yelled. I remember that she was speaking quite sharply, but I don't know that I would say she yelled. I can't recall that.
In your experience, is it the person who hit who hits the other that says, I'm sorry?
Objection, overbroad.
Overruled.
Go ahead. Who apologizes typically?
Usually the person who runs into the other person is the first to apologize.
And who's mad?
Objection.
Who's usually mad?
Excuse me, objection, that speculation, vague, and overbroad.
Overruled.
So who's usually mad?
Usually a person that feels like they were the victim
Okay.
is upset.
And have you seen collisions where there's a dispute, like you did it, no, you did it? Have you been there?
That happens from time to time.
Was there any dispute between these two among what you saw and heard from them?
Mr. Sanderson never said, "You ran into me," or
Did-
anything of that nature.
So was there any dispute to investigate that, like who's telling the truth?
Not at that time.
And did Ramon, by the way, did he ever come to you and say like, hey, I saw it and she hit him?
He did not.
He never said a word to you, right?
No.
All right. Let's go to the next. James is going to come show you another one. So I moved to admit this one, I believe, and it was received.
We reserve our objections, Your Honor.
Yes.
And James, do you mind? Thank you.
City Council, would you just approach before you do that? Want to take a break right now? Can we go over the next 10 minutes? Sure. Okay, let's take a recess now while they get ready for us. Thank you. We'll take 5 minutes. jury is assembling.
May I make one brief statement?
Sure.
So there are a total of 7 animations. We wanted to get in 6 through him. Your Honor has mentioned concerns with repetition, and we'll show one, has asked that we show just one more. I will represent that he will establish foundation for all of them for the portions he saw. What I wouldn't want is, because we have to hurry, we only do the 3, and then they object, the plaintiffs object to us getting in the other 3 to 4. So I'm all for not repeating myself, but there are different views. So I kind of moved to publish all of them.
Okay. And I think I've made my ruling that at least, each one of these, any animation is a demonstrative exhibit, and it's illustrative of a witness's testimony, not of a case. And right now, we've had 2 come in for this witness. Well, it looks like we may get one more, or a portion of it anyway. And all I can do is say that I'll take the other animations as they come, as demonstrative of a witness's testimony, if they are.
Okay. I think we could move very quickly through them if they'll just agree that he'll say the exact same thing for each one of them, but, which I don't think would be repetitive, but, may I ask him that you've reviewed all of them and they all fit these 5 points? But we're only gonna address one?
I mean, it's repetitious with this witness, so.
Right. We're only gonna show one, but can I establish the foundation for each of, like, the other 4 in mass?
If there's an agreement to that effect, otherwise you'll have to go through the normal process.
And I'm not hearing these people say.
There's not an agreement, Your Honor. We're gonna-
All right, so I do feel like you can't do it, but they won't agree that if we did it, we could do it. If people are following me.
And it was raised pre-trial in an effort to smooth things out, and I think it has helped dramatically. And I haven't changed my ruling from what I did at pre-trial. So I haven't changed my mind on it either. Okay, we're ready for the jury.
All right, the jury.
Let me just clarify for the record, Mr. Owens, if you give me just a minute. The last animation, which was called the Looking Uphill Animation Number 1 Demonstrative Exhibit, was received for demonstrative purposes from 0 to 8. I believe that's 8 seconds, and then from 17 to 22.
Okay, we're gonna show one more video, okay? By the way, have you reviewed all 7 videos?
I have, yes.
And as to, we're only gonna look at one, but do they all help explain your testimony to the jury?
Objection overbroad, Lex Foundation.
Your Honor, Mr. Owens already ruled on that.
Okay.
It's-
We're only gonna talk now about the overview view. Okay, overhead, thank you. Can Mr. Egan show the witness that
Yes, please.
animation? Thank you. This is also about 20 seconds. It's also no sound.
Same
keep,
spot.
keep track of the seconds.
Have you had an opportunity to review the animation from the overhead viewpoint?
Yes, I have.
And just so you know, since you did not see the accident itself, the moment of impact, we're gonna skip over that part.
Okay.
And so, like you did with the other one, we want you to tell us when to stop, when you stopped viewing something. Does the video, I should say the animation you just saw, will it help you explain your testimony to the jury?
It should,
should
yes.
be.
Overruled?
Yes, it will.
Will it help explain the position of the parties at the time of the accident?
That is probably the most important part, yes.
Does it help explain your recollection of the events?
Yes, it does.
Is it substantially similar to your recollection of the events on the date in question?
It is.
So move to publish this to the jury as a demonstrative exhibit.
Your Honor, same objections. Also, it lacks foundation because he can't possibly know what the view from whatever 50 feet above is.
Okay, it's received for demonstrative purposes only, not as evidence, but as illustrative.
Your Honor, once again, what number is this, please? Number two. Thank you for the overhead.
Uh,
It's your overhead view.
Thank you. Do you see the buckets in the top right? The
Yes.
snowmaking buckets? Does that help you in providing a landmark for where we are?
It does.
Now, you weren't flying over this in a helicopter looking down, right?
That is correct.
And the animation isn't perfect. Do you agree? It's not as good as if we had had a drone looking down on the site.
Yes, the animation shows everything almost in slow motion,
Uh-huh.
and the events were much more dynamic.
Okay, fair enough.
But as far as positioning, it's very good.
All right, let's show the video, and James is gonna jump over the. Will you tell us when to stop? Okay, let's stop for a minute and just orient everyone. Okay, at the top in yellow is Miss Oakes, the ski instructor. Is that true?
Correct?
Then apple and purple, that's Gwyneth's daughter. True.
Correct?
Moses, Gwyneth's son, right?
Correct?
Then you're just out of the screen,
I'm-
Christensen.
Yeah, I'm on the screen here.
Yeah, our screen's just a tab
Little
lower.
smaller,
You're about to
okay.
come in.
Okay.
And then woman is what's been viewed to as a kind of a more beginner skier. And you observed her?
I observed her but didn't pay a lot of attention to her.
Okay. And Mr. Sanderson will talk about her, and then Ms. Paltrow. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, let's stop just for a minute. Mr. Sanderson is over here. Did you observe him making turns?
Yes, I did.
What kind of turns?
They were large radius.
Asked and answered.
Overruled?
They were large radius turns, edge to edge, quite dynamic.
What's the word radius mean?
Radius is from the center of what would be a circle to the outside of the circle, and that's the arc that your turn makes.
So big or small?
He was making fairly large radius turns.
And what kind of turns was Gwyneth making?
She was making a shorter radius turn, so she was in a very narrow corridor, and he was, we use the term carpet to carpet, which means that you ski from one side to the opposite side as you make your turns, and he was close to carpet using the entire run.
And which is safer for the skier?
Well, if you make a small turn, you're out of the line of traffic. Making large radius turns is fine, but you have to be aware of all of your surroundings, and you have to be watching to make sure that you're not coming into traffic.
Okay. And when you're, let's play a little more, and will you tell us when to stop? You're seeing this on your own monitor.
Mhm.
Stop when you stop seeing things.
A little bit further. A little bit further. Right. Just okay. He's now below me.
Right there.
And so that's when I turned away from him.
And how many seconds is that on the, just for the record?
It's showing 5, but I know it's not 5.
Okay. So, were Gwyneth's skis headed downhill when you last looked?
Well, on a short radius turn, your skis are going back and forth, and she was making her turns very rhythmically.
Yeah.
She was in a pattern, you know, and a rhythm, I mean. And so, I mean, her body was facing down the hill.
Okay. And have you known her to be a reckless skier?
Never.
Or to ski out of control?
No.
Okay, and what you stopped us here, and I just want to be clear, was Mr. Sanderson's skis then moving toward her?
That is correct.
Now, is it possible Mr. Sanderson moved ahead of her and then slowed down?
I can't say for sure, but the amount of time that elapsed from the time that I looked away to the time of the collision, there was not much slowing.
Objection, speculation, lacks foundation, move to strike.
Overruled?
Okay.
Go ahead.
From the time that I looked away until I heard the scream was a very short period of time.
By the way, no one said that, for instance, Mr. Sanderson pulled in front of her and then came to a stop and then was hit, right?
No one has ever made that claim.
All right. And now we're going to jump ahead to when they came to a stop. So we're taking this off the screen. All right. And how many seconds do we know is this through?
Till they turn, till we go.
Yeah, I gotta press play, I think.
Okay, let's play the remainder.
16.
Okay. So there's Moses. He's sort of stopped. There are the buckets in the top right, correct?
Yes.
I'm calling them buckets. Did you call them snow-making equipment?
Well, we call them tubes.
Tubes.
Typically.
Okay.
They're big round tubes that just fit over everything. Because there's a standpipe and sometimes an electrical outlet, sometimes it's a compressed air pipe that comes up.
All right.
It's just protection so people don't bump into it.
All right. And let's just talk some more. Are there risks associated with skiing?
There certainly are.
On the back side of every ski pass you've ever seen, are those risks identified?
They are.
And what do they include?
They say that skiing is
Objection,
a...
Your Honor. This is, we've already discussed this. Goes beyond the scope of his testimony and what's allowable. If you'd like, we can approach.
I think it's fine, so I'm going to overrule the objection.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, the discussion about the inherent risks of skiing.
Yeah, I don't hear that question yet.
Well, he just said it.
Well, he asked him what was printed on the back of a ticket.
So overruled, go ahead. Comment on the back of
Okay.
every ski ticket you've ever seen.
I think it's talking about liability of the ski area. It does state that there are risks involved, that there may be patches without snow, there may be rocks, there may be trees. There's the possibility of collision with stationary objects or other people. And so there is a risk when you ski.
And so when Mr. Sanderson bought his pass, he understood that the risk of a collision with another skier, that's
Objection,
printed
Lawrence
right,
Foundation.
right on his
Sustained.
ticket.
Sustained.
Are you aware it references the risk of collision with another skier as an inherent risk of skiing?
It is,
Objection.
it is,
Overruled.
it is printed on the back of the ticket, yes.
And the pass holder accepts full responsibility for all risks associated with the activities.
Counsel, will you approach?
Yes. All right, let's talk about risks of skiing. So separate from the ski pass, okay? I do want you to just reference, what do you understand the risks of skiing to be?
Well, you're dealing with activity that involves sliding on snow. It covers different conditions, different weather conditions, different times of the season. Conditions can change constantly. You can have a front that can move through, and it can go from a fairly nice day to a super windy day with snow, blowing back and forth. So conditions are changing constantly, and part of what we try to do as ski instructors is to give people enough skills that they can deal with all conditions. And there are times when you have to go in. I mean, there's times where it's just too nasty outside and it's not comfortable, and you will go in. But we want to help people be safe at all times.
And but sometimes even though skiers are being careful, collisions do occur.
Objections. Calls for opinion evidence.
Sustained.
Comment on terrain. Terrain varies as well.
Terrain varies very much. You would never want to take a low-level skier.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You would never want to take a low-level skier on something that is over their head, where they would be frightened, unable to move, and make mistakes. We try to keep our terrain that we ski people on within their ability levels. And of course, if you're trying to teach, it's much easier to teach if they're comfortable on their terrain. If they're only thinking about surviving that terrain, it makes a very unteachable time.
Is a skier expected to ski within their own abilities?
They are.
Does that include physical abilities such as ability to see and hear?
I would say that covers it. If you have certain disabilities, you want to make sure that you compensated that by the way that you were skiing, the speed you were skiing, how you were looking around, etc.
From what you observed in your investigation after the accident, do you believe Ms. Paltrow was skiing within her ability at the time of the collision?
Objection, foundation. Calls for expert opinion.
Sus-
So-
Sustained.
Okay. Did you try to put together whose fault this was?
What happened was
Answer that question.
Objection.
Pardon?
Yes or no?
Oh.
Did you try to figure out what had
Yes,
happened?
yes.
And what did you do to do that?
I observed how they were on the ground.
Objection, expert opinion.
Overruled.
And
Okay.
Your Honor, we're gonna bring up his report right now, which has been pre-admitted, but go ahead, what was your
Okay.
investigation?
The first thing I did was observe how they were on the ground.
And what did you observe?
That Mr. Sanderson his head was uphill, skis downhill. That Miss Paltrow,
Approach, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Alright.
this is getting obstructionist.
Okay. Come on up.
One of the points, so is that overruled? To be, okay. So, we're gonna bring up that report. What did you observe on the issue of where the people were when they came to a stop? So Sanderson
Okay.
versus Paltrow.
okay. When they came to a stop, they were very close to skiers right, the edge of the run. Both had their skis below them. Both had their skis still on their boots. There was no releasing of skis. Their heads were uphill, their feet were downhill. And Miss Paltrow was on top of Mr. Sanderson.
And what does that tell you, the fact that their skis were still on?
It means that there was no heavy impact which would knock them over, like side to side. There was no, basically it means that they went down without any heavy impact on their ski boots.
If someone were to come and just kind of hit and literally project that person forward,
Objection, expert opinion testimony.
so my question is not complete.
Just a minute, go ahead.
Okay, if someone were to come and hit a second skier and propel them airborne, so they're flying, would they have ended up where they were when you saw them?
Objection, speculation.
Just a minute. Sustained.
Okay. How many incidents like this have you been present for?
It would be impossible for me to say because after 44 years of being a ski instructor, most of that full time, you see a lot of different instances. Could not speculate on that.
So I think I cut you off because I said, what did you do to try to figure out what happened? So when
Okay.
you said, I look at where they land.
I look at.
Go ahead then.
I look at the positions of the body where they land. It would be very difficult to get in that position without somebody hitting from behind.
Okay.
Move to strike expert or just opinion evidence. That's not.
Sustained.
Okay.
So what else do you look at other than where
Well,
they land?
The next thing I observed was what they were saying, and of course, Miss Paltrow was saying that she had just been hit. She never saw it coming. She was surprised. Mr. Sanderson made the statement that she just appeared in front of him. He was saying he was sorry, and that's basically the conclusions that I came to.
Objection. Move to strike. The conclusions are opinions that lack foundation, and that this witness is not able to, not properly designated.
These are speaking objections, Your Honor.
Would you please approach the bench?
Let's go to your report. So this is called D25A. Do you see this?
I do.
Did you prepare this that day?
Yes.
And did you engage in a cover-up to try to hide Gwyneth's reckless skiing?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled?
No, I did not.
Is that ridiculous and offensive?
It's very much so. Part of what we're required to do is, if there is an incident, if there's an injury, it's mandatory that everything that we be written down in a report. And on instances where there's a bump or something like that, where there are no injuries, it's up to us to decide whether it is prudent to fill out the report. And I decided it was prudent that day.
Okay. And exact location of incident, you wrote what?
I wrote skiers right, bandana, slight pitch before the flat on top.
Okay. Is that an accurate statement?
It is.
Number of students, you said there was what?
There were 6 in group, 2 instructors.
Okay. Now, there's been some testimony that Brad, her then boyfriend, now husband, also had 2 kids out with separate instructors. Is that true?
That is correct.
But they weren't in that group of 6 that was coming down Bandana. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. Students' ability. Now, was Gwyneth the student here, or is Moses?
Well, Moses was my student that I was skiing
Okay.
with, but Gwyneth was the person in the incident, so I wrote her name on the top.
There's some suggestion that immediately before this incident, somehow Moses was going, "Hey, mommy, look at me, look at me." Did you observe that?
That did not happen
And how do you know that?
because I was next to him.
Okay. So again, any implication that she was distracted because she was looking across the hill to Moses, you would dispute?
Objection, speculation, bleeding.
Just clarifying an
Sustained is
important
the
point.
reading.
Well, plaintiff has raised an issue, and I want to know if your thought on it. The thought is that the plaintiff has asserted is that you, right before the incident, Moses was saying, "Mommy, mommy, look at me." And your thought on that?
Objection, leading, lacks foundation, misstates prior testimony.
Overruled. The jury will have to remember the prior testimony.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Did that happen?
I never saw that happen. As we were skiing along, we were basically making our own turns. Miss Paltrow was skiing down, making very nice short radius turns. And we were separated by the width of the bandana run.
I was skiing with 9-year-old son, group was skiing down Bandana to lunch. Is that all true?
That is correct.
What was the student doing at the time of the incident? Go ahead.
Short turns down the fall line on skier's right.
By the way, had Gwyneth skied with you all morning with Moses?
I think we took one initial run together and then we split up with the intention of meeting at the top of Flagstaff Hill at a certain time to go to lunch.
All right. And had you and Moses already been on some ski runs without Gwyneth?
Yes.
And how many about?
Probably in that time span, about 4 or 5.
Short turns down fall line. Is that what that says, fall line?
Yes, fall
What
line.
What does that mean again?
The fall line is if you were to take a round object like a ball, set it down, it's the path that it would follow down the hill. So it's basically the most correct downhill line.
On skier's right. So that references where on the run?
Correct.
Next.
Skier's right would be, as you're facing down the hill, would be here. Skier's left, of course, over here.
Next portion. Chief complaint, would you read your answer?
Male skier took her out from behind. I didn't see it, but heard her scream as she went down. I skied directly to her. The man was behind her. Both were in discomfort. During lunch, she talked of being stiff and sore.
All right, let's just talk about that. Male skier took her out from behind. Why did you say that?
Because of the positioning of their bodies on the ground, but also I clearly observed him as the uphill skier. Now, you can't, right on the skier responsibility code, it says that the uphill skier has the responsibility to avoid the downhill skier, because as we're skiing, our vision cannot see behind us, and that's the reason for the responsibility code. And since I observed him moving very rapidly down the hill and only missed a few moments before the contact, I can clearly say that he was the uphill skier.
Did you determine one of them violated the skier responsibility code?
That would be my observation.
Objection. Way beyond the scope of this witness's. He's not an expert witness.
Overruled.
And who did you believe violated the responsibility code and who complied with it?
I would say that the
As to that question.
Okay. What did you find at the time with regard to the skier responsibility code?
Sustained.
Okay. May I consult with my counsel? Just one sec. All right, next statement here. First
Oh,
of
you
all,
want
is
me to
this a
read it?
true statement? Is what you said, were you speaking the truth when you prepared this report?
Okay. Where were you in relationship to the student at the time of the incident? I was above the student.
Okay.
Did you witness the incident? I said no, because I did not see the impact. If not, how did you become aware of the incident? I saw the immediate aftermath.
Okay. Was ski
Okay.
patrol called or first aid visited? You marked what?
I marked no, because we did not call patrol, because patrol came along very soon after that.
And to the right there, what did you write? Name of patroller.
I did not catch the name. I wish that I had. But once again, if there had been comments of, oh, I'm hurt, something's wrong, things like that, things would have changed very quickly. But what happened was I was in the process of helping Mr. Sanderson get his skis back on. I had my skis off, and both he and Mr. Ramon were there together. The patrollers came by, and one of them came up to us and asked if they needed any assistance.
Objection, hearsay.
Hearsay?
This
is
is
what I-
rephrase. He is explaining a story.
This is exactly what I observed.
I guess for limited purpose, not necessarily as to the truth of what this person said, but as to why he acted the way he did. So it's limited purpose evidence.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Keep going. Limit.
Okay,
the
so-
Controller said.
So the patroller asked if they needed assistance. Mr. Sanderson and Mr. Ramon spoke to each other. I was just kneeling on the snow. I did not hear what they said, but they turned to the patroller and said, "No, we're fine," or something to that effect. And so the two patrollers continued down the hill.
And then it says student returned to skiing. That's Miss Paltrow. But comment, did you see Mr. Sanderson then ski away?
I was the last one to put on my skis. So Mr. Sanderson, Mr. Ramon were already in their skis. I was the very last one to leave. And so I can't recall exactly how they skied off, but we basically either skied off together at the same time or they left slightly ahead of me.
Okay, we're going to look at the end of this report and move on here. Additional information, you wrote Carrie Oakes, correct?
Right, she was the other instructor that was there.
Additional comments, first thing male skier. or
Stated.
Stated,
Oh,
male skier
Skier.
stated.
Should be male skier.
Was that she appeared right in front of him.
Him.
Thus admitting that he was the uphill skier. She never saw him because he came in from behind. Was that your finding on that day?
That was my finding, yes.
So there's, I think, a comment that because she was tipping you for your service, that you falsified your report. Is that true?
That is ridiculous.
It says this was reviewed by Liz Wright. Is that your supervisor or what?
She is a supervisor.
Okay.
Not my direct supervisor, but a supervisor at the ski school, yes.
And that's your signature, bottom right?
It is.
And so, same day of the event, did you try to accurately represent everything?
I did. In my mind at that point, I thought that all issues had been resolved. I never expected it to come to this type of a situation. And so I was simply writing down briefly what happened. If I had realized that this would come to this type of a situation, I would have written much more and much more in detail.
Did I hear you say that you never observed the Mr. Sanderson unconscious?
Oh, absolutely not.
And were you there within seconds?
Probably within 10 to 15 seconds. The first thing that I did was I turned to Miss Oakes and said, "You take Moses, I'm going to go over and help out," or something to that. And then it was kind of a flat traverse, and so I simply skied across, and I was there within maybe 10 seconds.
Mr. Sanderson said you got in his face and yelled at him.
I did not. The tone of my voice would be very similar to what it is right now.
I think they're about to get up and suggest that you were sort of in Gwyneth's agent in making a cover-up.
Objection.
Do you-
Legal opinion.
I'm going to have him comment on it.
Why don't you leave it for redirect?
Okay. That is my cue to sit down.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Is it Mr. Bueller? However, that third animation went from 0 to 8 and then from 16 to 22.
Good afternoon. Mr. Christensen, do you recall your deposition of October 27, 2020?
Yes, I do.
In your deposition, you mentioned that Terry Sanderson, he was underneath her, and she was talking about discomfort. She was shocked. She was somewhat hurt. Is that correct?
She was in discomfort, that is true.
Was she hurt?
There's a difference between being hurt and injured. And so anytime that you have some type of a incident, you're going to be hurt to some degree, but that doesn't mean that you're injured.
You just testified that Miss Carrie Oakes was instructed by you to take the kids down the left side, correct?
I didn't tell her, I just told her to take Moses. I didn't tell her where to go.
Okay. Miss Oakes said she went over to the crash scene and was assisting you with the two people in the crash.
No, at one point, she had the kids follow her and they went down the hill and they came by us a little bit, but she did not assist, no.
Did she stop by you?
No.
Did she also say that one of the kids said, "Mommy, watch us ski"?
That would have happened at the very top of the hill, not at the time of the incident.
Yeah, but before, just before.
No, it didn't happen while it was just before the incident. It would have
Well,
happened
let's say
at the top.
within 10 seconds.
No.
Well, how long would it take to go from, when you say the top of the hill, do you mean when you get off the chairlift?
Yeah, as you get off the chairlift, you have to push yourself a little bit to the top of the bandana run, and it would have been in that area. So it would have been, a minute or so ahead.
So the viewpoint of those animations, those demonstrative, like a cartoon, it was, was that where Miss Oakes would have heard one of the children say, "Mommy, watch us ski"?
It would have been before we started to get to that point.
Well, how do you know that? You testified that didn't happen.
What I'm saying is it didn't happen during that time.
Okay, so you do you agree then that one of the children said, "Mommy, watch us ski"?
I cannot speak to that. All I know is it didn't happen while we were skiing down the hill.
Could it? I mean, it could have happened with Miss Oakes. She could have heard it.
Maybe she did.
Miss Paltrow. I mean, why would the kids say that? But for they wanted their mother to hear them and watch them ski.
At the time of the incident, there was nothing said. We were busy making our own turns.
But just before the incident, there was some seconds that elapsed, maybe 10, 15. That's when Miss Paltrow would have heard one of her children say, "Mommy, watch us ski."
I never observed hearing that.
Okay. You never saw the ski crash, right?
I didn't see the impact. No, I did not.
You said she screamed before the crash, right?
Well, I heard her scream, which would possibly be when the contact was made.
Could the scream have occurred before the contact?
No.
You have no basis of knowing that because you didn't see it.
Miss Paltrow doesn't go down the hill screaming. There would be no reason for her to scream just to scream.
That's your speculation because you didn't see it, right?
I did not see the point of impact, no.
You've heard of photographic memory, right?
I've heard of eidetic memory, yes.
I don't know if this is a word, but it sounds like you have a videographic memory. You've got a view of everything in front of you and to the side and behind, and it lasts for several minutes.
Mr. Bueller, when an incident like this occurs, it is very much in your mind, and you remember the things very clearly.
Now, this was about your third time instructing for Miss Paltrow's family on her third vacation for her. Isn't that true?
That is correct.
And isn't it true that you got so close to the family, maybe not close friends, but close enough that you sent Moses, her son, some handmade pottery that you made
I didn't send them. I gave them to him on their last day.
on this trip?
Not on this trip, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
The trip before?
I think 2 trips I gave him some things.
Did you give out candy to the kids?
No.
Did you ever tell Craig Ramon, your buddy just took out Gwyneth Paltrow?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall telling Miss Paltrow's name to Terry Sanderson or?
I don't recall it. It may have come up, but I don't recall.
With Miss Paltrow skiing away and her group skiing away, you were the last one at the crash site with Terry Sanderson and Craig Ramon, right?
I did stay with them until they were up and on their skis. That is correct.
They being Miss Paltrow.
No, that they being Mr. Sanderson, Mr. Ramon.
Well, Mr. Ramon wasn't on the. He didn't take off his skis, or he wasn't on the ground.
No, he never took off his skis but Mr. Sanderson had his skis off because I took them off. And so I was helping him put his skis back on. And that was what was going on when the patrol came by.
You never got the name of the patrol. True?
That is true. Once again,
Did you report this to the ski patrol at any time?
if people say they are not hurt,
I know, I just wanted
but
to.
no, I did not report it because
I-
once again,
we heard your
patrol
reason.
came and he refused.
The plaintiff's counsel is interrupting the witness.
Okay.
Point well taken, counsel.
Did you finish your response?
My response is that they were offered help from patrol and they refused.
Other witnesses say that the body positions that Miss Paltrow and you say where she's on top of Terry Sanderson, they testified that the positions were different than that. Do you know that?
It doesn't matter what they say. I can only tell you what I saw and what I observed.
You've talked about the importance of filling out a incident report accurately, right?
Yes.
You mentioned that Miss Paltrow said she was, or looked like she was sore, may have been hurt, or was hurt, according to your deposition, right?
That's what she told me during lunch, yes.
Okay. And you filled out your report later,
At the end of the day, yes.
but in your report, you never got the names of Terry Sanderson, right?
I did not.
You never got the name of the only eyewitness we know of, Craig Ramon, right?
I did not, because once again, when people say, I'm fine, I'm sorry, and when I ask them if they're hurt and they say no, they went their way, we went our way.
Do you know Gwyneth Paltrow says she got up by herself?
Alls I can say is I helped everybody get their skis off, and she may have gotten up by herself. I may have helped her with an arm.
She said her skis weren't off, I believe. Do you know that? And they never came off.
Well, no, they never came off during the incident. I removed them so that they could get untangled.
And just backing up, right after you heard the scream, you didn't see the collision. You skied over, and you yelled at Terry Sanderson, "What did you do? What did you do?" True?
That is not true.
You don't yell at all in your life?
I did not yell. First of all, I was trying to observe what was happening, and I took off my skis. I came around to try to untangle them. I did not yell at Mr. Sanderson.
Do you ever teach group lessons?
I do.
And do sometimes the students spread out?
At Deer Valley, private rotation instructors teach max fours, which means there's no more than 4 people in your group. So I do teach those. As far as spreading out, you try to keep your group as close together as possible, but there are tasks that where they may go down one at a time and things like that.
Well, if a student goes far away, don't you yell at that student to come get back in line? Don't you have to holler at them?
I don't yell. I don't
How
have
would
a.
they hear you then?
We ski down to them.
Well, then the other students go another direction. You never raise your voice at Deer Valley? Is that your policy?
If I raise my voice, I lose my voice very quickly. I can't yell. As far as talking to students, you try to maintain a class situation where we will stop at certain places. We'll gather together. We try to always gather at the edge of the run so we're out of the line of traffic. But no, I don't go around yelling all over the resort.
I didn't say that. I just said, do you ever yell once at a student who might be too far away from your group and you want them to come back?
No, they can't come back. If they're below you, you have to go to them. They're not going to come up the hill.
You can't say, hey, come back over here, Bill.
Oh, I might, if they're just across the run, I will say things like that, but I'm not yelling.
You're whispering? Or
No, I'm talking in
phone.
a normal voice.
But if there's a lift machinery or there's noise or something, you never raise your voice at all while you're ski instructing?
This is getting a little silly, don't you think?
I don't know. You're the one that says you never yell while you're ski instructing. I find that hard to believe. So you didn't see the crash, but you saw injury and soreness, and you didn't get the plaintiff's name, even though Ms. Paltrow may have been hurt. Doesn't that seem like a violation of what you're supposed to do as a ski instructor at Deer Valley?
What I was relying on was the comments of both parties. And both parties said that they were okay. As far as Mr. Sanderson being injured, he had a wonderful opportunity to tell patrol, I am hurt, I need help. But instead, he refused help and had patrol continue on their way. Those are when things like that happen, I made the decision that he was okay, and so once I had his skis on, I put my skis on and I left.
Within maybe 3 minutes of you leaving this crash scene, Mr. Sanderson was talking to a ski patroller who actually wrote a report and said he had sore ribs and disorientation.
Well,
Just a second,
yes?
there's an objection. Overruled, asking if the witness knew.
Okay. That may have happened then, but he did not report that to me. And that was after I had asked him. And once again, patrol had asked him.
The mystery patrol that you don't know the name of, right?
I do not know the name, but they know who it is from the log. Basically, they have a log where they write down when they go out to make a ski around. So they do know who that individual is. But once again, if you're a ski patroller and you come up on someone and you say, "Do you need help?" and they say they do not, and you ski on, 3 or 4 years later, it's very unlikely that they will remember that incident. I wouldn't.
Correct, but you just said that the incident that you report, which is Terry Sanderson waved off the ski patrol,
Mm-hmm.
is in a log, the ski patroller's log?
No, their rotation of who would be going down would be in the log.
Okay, but there's no,
There-
there's no report of this in the ski patroller's log that you just reported is in there.
That's because they stopped and he did not ask for assistance. And so there's no reason that they would go down and write in a log, stopped and talked to this person, they didn't need help.
So you're saying then your testimony from about 1 minute ago is incorrect, that it's there should be a log report of Terry Sanderson waving off?
No, that's not what I said.
That's what I thought you said.
That may be what you thought I said. What I said was that when ski patrol goes out and takes a run and just observes things, they put in a log that when they leave and make that run. So they do know who was on the hill at that time.
So are you speculating about this? This skier's log? That it
No.
should show this?
This
You know this?
You can talk to Steve Graff when he testifies, because he's the one that told us that they pretty well know who it is. But once again, if somebody stops and talks to somebody for just a few moments and then skis off, they're not going to remember that 4 or 5 years later because it was such a minor incident. They stop and talk to people constantly, and unless there's an incident where they have to respond, it's not going to be something that they keep in their memory.
Right, but the 4 broken ribs, severely broken ribs, my client Terry Sanderson had, they're the kind that make it hard to breathe, let alone talk. And I'm not,
Well,
and you're speculating that he was not injured, correct?
no, I'm not speculating. I'm saying that he never said he was injured. There's a difference.
Because he couldn't speak
No, he was speaking. He's-
normally?
I have no knowledge of that because I don't know the man. I don't know how he speaks normally.
Just give me a moment.
Hmm?
Excuse me. You say if kind of implies to me that you're speculating, or it's not necessarily true. If the patrol log had information about who was skiing down at the time of this crash, we don't have that information.
Remember, these.
I don't think there's any question right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move to strike
What-
the statement.
Sustained.
Was Brad Falchuk at the scene of the crash?
He was slightly downhill. I don't know, 20 to 30 yards possibly.
That's slightly 20 to 30 yards.
He was ahead of us.
Did you say, is that your testimony, 20 or 30 yards approximately?
I'd be speculating at this point, but I know that he was ahead of us.
Well, you knew that Craig Ramon was maybe 60, 80 yards, maybe out of the picture
No,
above you.
I didn't say that. I said that he was, time-wise, it took him about 45 seconds to get to us. I never said anything about distance.
What if Greg Ramon was right behind you, and you don't have eyes behind your head, do you?
I do know that when I responded and came over, I took off my skis. I was helping both parties. I was over the edge just slightly on skier's right. I could see the whole ski area, ski run in front of me. Mr. Ramon didn't show up for approximately 45 seconds. So all I am saying is that it took him longer to come down the run. I have no idea how far up the hill he was, but he was not close enough to be right on the scene.
So the animation where it depicts Mr. Ramon way up the hill is based on not your testimony.
I never saw Mr. Ramon on the animation, did I?
Are you looking to counsel to answer for you?
I don't remember seeing Mr. Ramon on the animation.
So that part of the animation is fiction. It's not supported by your opinion.
I do not know where Mr. Ramon was, no.
That's all for right now, unless... Oh, wait. If Brad Falchuk said he was first on the scene, is that true?
I think that misstates his testimony, Your Honor, so object to the form of the question.
Overruled.
Okay. I would say that I was the first one on the scene.
That's all for right now, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bueller. Mr. Owens?
Your Honor, defense 110 is a better copy of the prior defense 110, and I'd like to approach.
I think we already discussed this,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
as long as the other side has seen it. Oh, are these my copies?
Yes, for
Okay.
your binder, and may I put this, give
Sure.
this to the witness?
Yes.
And James, could you bring this up? Take a look at that. I had a terrible copy of this before, but defense 110, our texts between you and Gwyneth. Do you recognize them?
Yes, they're on my phone.
They're better quality on your phone than my photographing Gwyneth's phone. Are these true and accurate documents?
Yes, they are.
And so they're 110A and B, and let's just go through them really quick. Friday, February 26th, that's the day of the event, true? The accident?
Yes.
We went?
Yes.
And are you the dark color on the right or the lighter color on the left?
No, I'm the one that's in dark color.
We went down Bandana. Why are you saying that to Gwyneth?
Okay. Okay. Yes, we went down Bandana.
Okay, cool. We should take north side up. You said yes. We are going to north side again. Feel free to do your own thing. You wrote what?
We are Ruby Lift.
Okay, that's at 10:36. We have new skis. This is 205 U, right? We have new skis. We've gone down Ontario and we're back to Smiles. She wrote yay.
Mm-hmm.
And then 229 Moses wants to know if you are skiing, still skiing and where. You wrote that to my client.
Yes.
And she wrote, and a little further down, James, I came in. That guy sort of hurt me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm going to get a massage at 3. Gigi is here if he wants to come in. Was that a true and accurate statement?
Yes. Yes.
By the way, so separate from this, Carrie Oakes, she has some memories. Would you defer to her on what she remembers?
I know that she could testify about Mr. Sanderson's turns because we both observed him making fast, wide turns down the hill.
And Brad Falchuk has some memories, and he's gonna, would you defer to his memories?
I don't really know Brad at all, so, and I've never talked to him really, so I can't say anything to that.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
But, yeah.
like, were you focused on what Carrie was doing and what Brad Falchuk was doing, or were you focused on the two people who had a collision?
I was actually focused on Moses, but part of focusing on Moses is being aware of everything around me.
Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.
Are we done with this witness?
Just a second.
Just a good time for a short break. We can confer a little bit.
Sure, let's take a short break now. You are right now, but same instruction as before. You're welcome to step down.
Just for courtesy of the witness and for our witness who's about to come, can we just get a sense for how many minutes left?
5 or less.
So I had a very narrow redirect, but proceed we will.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Christensen, you can come on up. Jury's on their way in. Could you verify that they are?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, no more questions for Harry Christensen.
Okay.
He doesn't have to stay up there.
Did you have any redirect?
No, I mean, there'd be a small possibility we'd call him later in the week if something new comes up. But
Okay. I'll just excuse you in front of the jury then.
Okay.
Next witness in the courtroom? Yeah, go ahead. Right. Thank you. So, Mr. Christensen, there are no more questions for you from the lawyers, so you're excused for today, but you may be called back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. You can have a seat.
Good afternoon. Yes. And maybe once you get up to the microphone, if you could state your full name and spell it. Thank you.
Whitney Smith, Whitney Smith.
Whitney, thank you for being here, and we will try to get through you quickly. We're at the end of the day, and we want to make sure that we're respectful of your time here. We, again, appreciate you coming. Let's begin by asking you where you're from.
I'm from Michigan.
And have you ever met Gwyneth Paltrow?
No,
Have you ever met Terry Sanderson?
I have.
How did you meet him?
I met him at Deer Valley, I believe it was in 2016.
And what was the nature of that interaction?
I responded to an incident on the Bandana Run where he was injured.
Okay, and do you have memories of that day and those events?
I do.
Okay, and as I understand it, you also created a report about that?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll look at that report. But you were in, I think, the capacity of a ski patrol person when you came upon him, or when you were called to the scene, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you give the jury just a sense of your experience and training that got you to that point that you could be a ski patrol person?
Sure. At that point I had my EMT basic, which is our level, and I think that was my second year patrolling. So we had some medical training, and we set up ropes, pads, boundaries, everything around the mountain, and respond to incidents.
Do you have any EMT training?
I do, yes. I'm an emergency medical technician.
Okay. And can you give the jury just a sense of what that means?
Sure. It's sort of basic first aid that we're able to render there on the slopes, deal with any kind of life threats, and then our main deal with ski patrol is stabilize the patient and remove them from a cold environment down to somewhere where we can reassess.
Okay. And did you have that training at the time of the accident?
I did.
Okay. How many years had you been an EMT before then, do you recall?
I think it was about 2 years at that point.
So you had seen other accidents like that, or you had come upon other accidents with that EMT training to respond?
I had responded to more than several incidents at that point.
Okay. Do you have any rough estimate as to how many?
No, I don't, sorry.
That's fine. Let's go with your memories first, then we'll go to your report real briefly. What do you recall caused you to go to that scene where Mr. Sanderson had called you?
I don't have a specific recollection of the radio call, but I know that Flagstaff Mountain, which was where Bandana is, was called and notified that there was potentially an incident on Bandana, and then I was sent to respond to that.
And what was your understanding at the time of what the incident was that needed a response?
I wasn't sure at that point what it was. It just came in as probably, we call it a possible 1050, a possible incident, and the location.
Got it. And then what do you remember seeing when you got to that point?
Sure. When I came up, I saw Mr. Sanderson standing on the side of the run. You know, there's a mountain host present who I believe was the one who made the radio call, and a friend was there. And then I skied up and began talking with them.
Okay, and what's your role? What are the things that you typically do when you respond to an incident like this?
Sure. So as I come into a scene, I'm already doing a bit of a scene size up. Sometimes there's clues, right? If there had been like skis up the run and someone's way down them, you can tell something happened. So a size up to maybe get a feel for what's going on, and then I go in and I usually introduce myself, ask them their name, and just sort of, hey, what's happened? What's going on today? And then from there, do you have any pain or anything like that?
And was it your understanding that there had been a collision?
Not offhand, but once I had gotten there, when I asked what had happened, they said there was a collision.
And who reported that to you?
Mr. Sanderson.
And what did he tell you?
I don't recall specifically. I think when I asked, like, hey, what happened, they just said there was a collision up higher, and then they had skied down and decided that they couldn't keep skiing down and needed assistance.
Got it. So you got to a site that was different from the collision site?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember hearing anything from Mr. Ramon, the friend that was there?
While I was doing my assessment, I don't remember specific words, but I know that he had mentioned a couple of times that there was a collision beforehand and who may have been involved.
Did he ever tell you that he had witnessed the collision?
No, he was mostly talking to Mr. Sanderson, and I was kind of overhearing while I was assessing.
Okay. And what was your assessment in terms of the potential for physical injury?
So as I was talking with him, I was asking him if he had pain. I do recall he was talking about some right-sided rib pain, so we went through and made sure breathing and whatnot was okay. And then he said he was able to answer all my questions appropriately, but did seem a bit rattled.
Okay. Do you remember him complaining about anything related to his brain or his head?
I don't recall.
Did you observe him to have any cognitive disability or limitations?
Per my assessment, he was alert and oriented by 4, which is part of our assessment there, which means he's 4 out of 4.
Okay, and explain that to the jury, the 4x4 idea.
Yeah, so it's to see if you're oriented to person, place, time, and event. So I'll ask, do they know who they are? Do they know what day it is? Event, do they know what happened? And then person, place, time. And I usually give them sort of a general, politics question, like who's the president? If they can answer that, then they're usually doing that.
Got it. So you're just trying to test that they're cognitively aware and able to speak to you, communicate with you.
Yes.
And you do that every time as a matter of course, just any time you are on a scene and assessing a person?
Yeah, you can typically just kind of throw those in for conversation and get a feel of how someone is cogniting.
So you feel confident that you did that?
I did do that.
Did you do anything to assess the rib pain at that point?
I don't recall specifically doing that. I can tell you how I would do that, so I can tell with confidence if that's what I wrote in my report, that is what I did.
Okay. And speaking of the report, what's the reason that you actually wrote out a report in this case?
When we go on an incident with someone who has an injury, we just fill out paperwork for everyone's liability and future needs.
Okay. Just trying to get down what the facts that were reported to you and that you observed.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you assessed Mr. Sanderson on the hill, and at that point, did he know who hit him?
No, he never said who hit him. He just was like, yes, I was in a collision.
Did he know what had happened?
He, aside from saying, I believe, according to my paperwork, he said he was hit from behind. So that was what he told me in a collision, but beyond that, he didn't have much in the way of specifics.
Okay. And then What about Mr. Ramon? Did he report to you any details about what he had seen?
He mentioned a couple times that the skier involved had been Ms. Paltrow, but beyond that, there were no specifics of like how it happened.
And do you know how he knew it was Miss Paltrow?
I do not. I hazarded a guess that he had seen, but I don't know for sure.
Was it a little surprising that a name that you knew, like a celebrity name, had come up?
Sure, I mean, it wasn't what I expected for the day.
Right. And was Mr. Ramon believable to you?
He wasn't. I wasn't talking a whole ton directly to him because I was busy. I wanted to assess my patient and make sure that he was in a good way and didn't need anything super immediate. So I do recall when it had been brought up that there was a collision that I had asked if the other party was okay because I wanted to make sure there wasn't another injured person floating around somewhere.
I see. But you didn't have your own conversation with Mr. Ramon about what he had seen?
No.
And what about, did you hear anything about someone being unconscious, or Mr. Sanderson being unconscious for a few minutes?
No, I didn't get that reported. That would have upped the seriousness of that call for me really fast.
Yeah, so that's my next question. If you had heard Mr. Sanderson was unconscious for 2 minutes or a long time, what would you have done?
That would have been, if you're reporting a loss of consciousness, typically you get to leave the resort in an ambulance. That's kind of where that goes. Even if you're mentating correctly for me there, if I hear you were out cold on the snow for 2 minutes, I'm going to call an ambulance and let you refuse them directly.
And what about loss of consciousness for a shorter period of time than that, even 5 seconds?
Sure. It's kind of any loss of consciousness. If someone said, hey, this person was out, I'm going to start looking at that.
Okay, and you feel confident that you did not hear about anything like that?
I don't recall ever hearing that, no.
And I think I asked you this, but just to make sure, did Mr. Ramon tell you how he believed that, led him to believe that Ms. Paltrow had been the other person in the collision?
No, aside from saying the name, he didn't expound.
Okay, so then once you've done that assessment, have we covered that assessment, I should ask, that on the Hill?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, have we covered what you did in that assessment, what you remember in that assessment on the Hill?
Yes, I mean, there's a bit more to it, probably.
Okay,
than
please tell the jury.
over.
Yes, I don't want to cut you off.
Sure, there's, it's a head to toe, right? It's not just, if you tell me your ribs hurt, I'm absolutely going to look at that, but they can distract from other things. So it's a head to toe assessment to make sure that there's nothing sneaky happening elsewhere. And then I would have palpated the ribs, have him breathe in, make sure that's all going properly.
Got it. Okay. And what were your findings after that head to toe assessment?
Sure. The majority was that rib pain. He wasn't having trouble breathing, so I was comfortable with that. But he definitely had something going on in that vicinity.
Okay. Got it. Then, as I understand it, I think Mr. Sanderson has spoken to this, that he was taken on a toboggan, is that right?
Correct, yeah. I packaged him in the sled and took him down to our first aid area.
Okay, and what happened after that?
We would have gone into first aid and I think sort of reassess once we're in a place where, okay, pull your jacket off, pull your helmet off. Does anything else hurt now that it's been a few minutes? And then from there, I do recall I spent a fair amount of time waiting for his friend to bring the car around. So we chatted for a bit.
And when you say a bit, an estimate of how long that actually
Estimated
happened?
around 2 hours.
Okay, and how long was the assessment on the Hill?
It was probably 10 minutes. That's a rough estimate, but 10 to 15 before we were packaged and moving.
So you spent a lot more time with him in the first aid
I did.
clinic?
Yeah.
I
did, yes.
Yes, it's okay. And is that typical that you would stay with a patient for 2 hours?
It's a bit abnormal. We do try and get back up into rotation, but also Deer Valley's customer service says that we stay with the patient until the end, make sure, A to B, they're on their way and are in a good spot. And it's also just good medical care to not say, see you, bye.
Right.
So.
That makes sense. And was there any reason, aside from waiting for this car, that you needed to stay with him for 2 hours?
I wanted to keep assessing and make sure that he didn't trend downward in any of his symptoms, which he did not. So that was the main reason, was just to make sure he got on his way.
Okay, so was there any indication early in the first aid visit, the reassessment down at the bottom of the hill, that he would need 2 hours of care from you?
No.
Okay, and why do you say that?
He wasn't, trending downward. His symptoms were staying the same with his root pain, and sort of that rattled kind of feeling that I'd noted on the hill seemed to be dissipating. We were able to converse pretty well.
Okay, and was there any time during all of that afternoon that you spent with Mr. Sanderson that you saw evidence of a head injury or a brain injury?
No. As time went on, I said this guy is ANO4, so I felt comfortable releasing him private vehicle.
And was that ANO4? Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay, and again, that means that he was alert to those 4 different categories you mentioned earlier.
Correct.
And I think he earlier told the jury that you gave him some things to remember.
Yes.
Do you recall
that? There's a handful of sort of head assessments you can do, and that's one of them. I'll usually give somebody 3 words, and then sort of periodically throughout the scene time, I'll ask him to repeat that for me.
Right, and was one of them your horse's name?
No, that's not usually one I use.
Oh, okay.
I use Blue Snow 24 without fail the whole time I've patrolled.
Okay.
So.
And let's see. So you were doing various tests to make sure that he was fully alert and his cognitive facilities were intact. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you found no concern.
He was not trending downward. He was solid.
But did you encourage him to go get further care at all?
I did, yeah.
And what was that for?
He had the rib pain, and I told him if any other concerns came up, then you should talk to whoever sees you at the clinic.
Okay, got it. So let's go to your report. Well, actually, let's finish the day. So you finished with him once he got a ride and you knew that he was okay, that he had someone to take him. What did you do after that?
I would have rotated back to the top. I don't have a specific memory of that, but I would have rotated back to the top of a mountain and checked in.
Okay, got it. And then did you talk to anybody else during the day after you had been with Mr. Sanderson about what had happened?
Sure. When I came in for the evening, he was then our patrol director, Steve Graff. I just sort of mentioned like, oh, hey, it's kind of a interesting sidebar. Somebody said they saw Ms. Paltrow on the slopes today, may have had something to do with my incident. And it was sort of just a 3-minute conversation, and then...
And what was there any discussion about the injuries, or was it just the fact that it was Ms. Paltrow involved?
Just the fact that maybe she was involved.
I see. And you obviously were not there. I think you've made it clear you weren't there at the actual collision and you didn't see what happened, correct?
Correct.
And you never saw Ms. Paltrow that day?
I did not.
You didn't talk to her?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna put your report on the screen here. It will also come up on that screen.
Okay.
I believe it has already been published to the jury. This is Defense 24A. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's also Plaintiff's Exhibit 1.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's see, this is I'm using a different cord here up here that I haven't been using back at my table, and it's not working. Let's replug it in. Sorry for that. Let's wait. It had been working.
If you need a drink, let me know.
Okay, I think let's go back to, we know that this one works. Just pull it up here. Should be good. There we go. Sorry for that wait. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so is this your report?
It is.
And when did you create it?
The date on it is the 26th of February 2016, so that's when I would have done it.
Okay, do you remember what time in the day?
I don't specifically recall, but it does say 12 p.m. on there.
Okay, got it. And I'm just going to go through a few parts of it here. So if we pull up the first part, oh, I apologize.
We need to redact this.
I'm on, yeah, should I redact that first part? I apologize. I had it redacted on here and it just deleted. Okay. So, my apologies. Okay. So, I just want to point out a couple things. So here on the right side, there's a weight and a height. Do you see that?
Yes.
And do you just get that from a report from the patient?
I typically just ask, yes.
Okay, got it.
Fill it
And
out.
then here it says collision, and you say yes, correct?
Yes.
And then here it says with, and it says unknown, other party not present. Why did you write that?
Because Mr. Sanderson wasn't sure about who the person involved with the collision was, and they weren't there for me to find out.
Got it. And then if we go to this next section here, there's mention of similar injury or illness, and it says yes.
Yes.
Do you see that? And then it says year 2010. Do you recall what that was regarding?
I don't recall the specific mention of what happened in 2010, but that relates directly to what I check lower down in the form as the injury. So it would have been for the ribs.
Okay, got it. Yeah, let's go to that. So down here where you talk about the injury, it's a section that's called possible injury, correct? Here on the
Correct.
side?
Yes.
And you checked fracture, I see. There's a X there, correct?
Yes.
And strain and sprain. What were those connected to?
To the ribs, yes.
Okay.
We do not diagnose, so that's why it's possible. So
Got it. And then there's also a note of, or a box relating to concussion, and then head over here. Those are not checked, correct?
Correct.
And would you have checked those if you were concerned about possible concussion?
I would have.
And then a head injury as well?
Correct.
And then this section over here, it says other, and then if I'm reading your handwriting correctly, it says ribs?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then it says right over here, and is that related to the ribs?
The right side, yes.
Okay, so this document is an accurate representation of the injuries that you thought he possibly sustained on that day?
Correct.
Okay. And this also mentions that first aid was rendered both at injury site, you had an assessment, correct?
Yes.
And then also in the aid area, you reassessed.
Correct.
And you've already explained those two assessments, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's one part that I redacted that I want to pull up, so give me a second. Okay, so this section here says corrective lenses required, and it says yes. Do you see that? Oh, whoops.
It's gone, sorry.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, there
Go
it
ahead.
is.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Corrective lenses required.
Yes.
Yes. And then it says worn, and you check no, correct?
Correct.
And why would you have done that?
I'll ask them the corrective lenses question if they do need them. If they tell me yes and I don't visibly see glasses, I'll ask if they have contacts in. And if they tell me no, then I'll check no.
Okay, got it. The second page of your report is Defendant's Exhibit 24B, and I think we've already published this, correct? No objections?
No, we have Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, which is the exact same document.
Similar, right? Okay, thanks. And then here I just wanted to point out there's various places where you get to kind of describe a little more detail, correct?
Yes.
And here's a section where you get to talk about what you did. And it says assessment, do you see that?
Yes.
And then mild disorientation. What did you mean by that?
So I put assessment, and then those would be my findings on that assessment. His mild disorientation when I was there was the lack of specificity for what had happened during the collision. He was able to tell me that there was a collision and not much beyond that, or who was involved, and then the rib pain that we found.
Okay, so that mild disorientation, and when you wrote it, you didn't mean that to indicate any cognitive problems or concern for concussion, anything like that?
I think it did originally spike my concern for a head injury because he wasn't able to tell me how he fell. But then as time went on, I became less concerned about that, as I noted later.
Right, and are you referring to the reassessment that says disorientation lessened?
Yes.
Got it, okay. I also note on this page that there's a section down here that says witness, and there's contact information, identifying information you could have put here, but you didn't put anything. Is that correct?
Correct.
And why didn't you put anything?
No one seemed to be a direct witness to what happened.
Okay. If Mr. Ramon had told you, I saw this and here's what happened, you would have put his name here?
Yes.
Okay. And at the bottom, you can't see it that well with what I called out, but is that your signature at the bottom?
Yes.
Whoops. So sorry about that. If you go here, right at the bottom, it says, I carefully read the above statement and it is true and accurate.
Yes.
And then that's your signature
That's
after
my
that?
signature, correct.
Okay, and you stand by that signature?
I do.
Okay. Let's go back to 24A real quickly because there's one part I want to hit that I missed. Actually, I need more than that. There's this section that says injured's description of incident. And it says was hit from behind, correct?
Correct.
And am I reading this correctly that this was Mr. Sanderson Mr. Sanderson's description because he was the injured?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Typically, I ask the injured party what happened, and then I'll write down exactly what they tell me.
Got it. Okay. There's also an addendum to your report, right?
There is.
And can you tell the jury why you made an addendum to your report?
Sure. And I forget who exactly made the request, but it was just requested that I fill out an extra form with anything else I might have remembered.
Okay, and this is Defendant's Exhibit 25B, and I think it has been published. No objection, correct?
No objection. It's also part of Plaintiff's Exhibit 1.
Great. Okay, so is this the additional comments that you made?
It is.
Okay, and there's a date down at the bottom I note that's 3/18/2016, which is obviously after the accident, correct?
Correct.
And so, again, why did you do this a few weeks later?
Sure. To my knowledge, it had come to note that maybe Ms. Paltrow had been present on the mountain, and with all the different information coming through the office, I wasn't privileged to that. They thought that maybe they would want some more information for that, so they asked me to write it down.
Okay, so was there a question in your mind initially about whether Ms. Paltrow actually was involved?
No, it wasn't something I was really thinking about.
Okay, so you weren't sure
Correct.
whether what Mr. Ramon said was true?
Yes, I was just focused on patient care at that point.
Okay. And if we go to the actual comments here, let's do your first paragraph. Do you mind reading it for us?
Sure. I recall that upon arriving on scene on Bandana at the bridge, I found the patient, Terry, standing on the right side of the run in his skis. The mountain host that had radioed patrol was above doing traffic control. A friend of Terry's was also present, a large man, blue jacket, black pants, dark hair, hereby referred to as large male friend. Terry said that he was uncertain what had happened. LMF told Terry that a woman had struck him from behind, knocking him down. LMF stated he had believed that the woman had been Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay, so there's this note, I think you've already described this, but I want to make sure I understand. Terry said that he was uncertain what had happened. He actually told you that?
Correct.
Okay. And then LMF, who you understand is Craig Ramon, is that right?
Yes.
Had told Terry that a woman had struck him from behind, knocking him down. So that was something you heard Ramon tell Terry?
Yes.
He didn't tell you that?
No.
Okay. Let's go to the next section here. Do you mind reading it for us?
I asked if anyone had spoken to the woman. Can I call him Craig in this? Is that all right? All right.
Sure, I mean, you know who it is that
Craig
you met.
said he had asked her if she was all right. He said she had told him she was fine and skied away. During assessment, transport, and time in first aid, Craig continued to say that the woman involved in the collision was Gwyneth Paltrow.
So you remember that he kept bringing up this point of Miss Paltrow's involvement?
I do.
And you don't know how he knew it was her?
No, I don't.
Okay. And then I think the last section, which I guess is a couple paragraphs, sorry, I cut that off. So at Empire First Aid, we were met by 3 others from Terry's skiing group. Do you remember that?
I do.
And who were those?
According to this, it was a blonde woman, a man, and Debbie.
Okay, and you didn't have any interaction with them, or did you?
I don't specifically recall it. I do know they came into first aid to check on their friend, but that's the extent of my recollection there.
Okay, and did they stay with Terry the whole time he was there?
No, after, and I don't know how long, everybody went back out skiing and one went to go get the car.
Okay, and left Terry with you alone?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's another sentence here that seems like the similar things you've said before. I recall LMF or Craig reiterating to the group his identification of the woman to have been Gwyneth Paltrow. Do you see that?
I do.
And when you write his identification of the woman, does that mean that it was your understanding that he personally identified the person as Miss Paltrow?
That was, yes. I guess I probably made the assumption that it was a sight thing, and that's what
Okay.
he had come up with.
Okay. And then eventually Debbie, who had left to retrieve the car, came back and picked him up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then at the bottom you identify LMF as Craig.
It came back to me, yes.
Okay. When you say it came back, you
His-
couldn't remember his name at the start, but then later remembered it?
Correct.
Okay. As you were writing out and bringing these memories back?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So is it fair to say that his ribs, or I'll ask it this way, were his ribs his chief complaint?
Yes.
And he did not offer any indication to you of a head injury?
No.
Oh, whoops, sorry. I have just one last thing I want to look at, and then I think we're done. So dizziness, loss of balance, did you observe anything like that?
No, I was monitoring for those things and didn't see them.
Blurred vision,
No.
ringing in the ears,
No.
sensitivity to light,
No.
sensitivity to sound,
No.
mood changes,
Not that I observed.
was he dazed or confused?
No.
Did you talk about a headache,
No.
nausea,
No.
vomiting,
No.
fatigue?
I don't know if I asked him about that one.
Okay.
So not that I recall there.
Okay, got it. Any speech problems?
Not that I noticed.
And the jury has seen a picture of you before.
Okay.
Sorry to inform you. We have been talking about you already.
Okay.
And do you remember Mr. Sanderson taking a picture
I do.
of you
Yes.
during that first aid?
Yes, while we were at Empire First Aid.
Yeah, and did you note at any time, was he on his phone and making a post about that picture?
I'm not sure. I don't recall.
Did you help him put together a post at all?
No.
Okay. Did you check his eyes carefully?
I did, yes. We assess for basically pupil reactivity when you shine a light, if they're constricting and then dilating back out again.
Okay, and you remember doing that?
His were equal and reactive.
Okay, and what does that tell you if they're equal and reactive?
It's just another test to see if potentially there is a brain bleed, mostly.
Okay, got it. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Bueller?
I think the plaintiff's or defendant's exhibit of your report is a little bit clearer. The one we have is a little less clear on page 3. What was that exhibit number for defendant?
Which part of it? The first page?
Is it each one a separate exhibit?
Yeah, 26, it's around, so 24A is the first page of the incident.
B, C?
Yeah, they're slightly out of order.
The supplemental report is 25B.
Yeah, if that's what,
Okay.
if that's what you're looking for.
Okay. Are you qualified to diagnose TBI or brain injury?
No, I do not diagnose.
You noted on your report that there was, under assessment, the first thing you wrote was mild disorientation, correct?
Correct.
And then, and rib pain right side, correct?
Correct.
And then transport via toboggan to EFA, that's Empire First Aid.
It is.
And then reassessment, disorientation lessened, but the disorientation was still apparent at the first aid station, right?
Not by the time Mr. Sanderson left, no.
But before, when he got there at the first aid station, he had mild disorientation.
I do not recall that being down there.
Okay. And you did not believe Craig Ramon, the large male friend, LMF, when he told you, or told in your presence, that it was Gwyneth Paltrow who had hit Terry from behind?
It seemed like sort of an unbelievable statement at the time.
Kind of like Batman appeared on the scene, that strange?
Similar.
Okay. And it was the supervisor that asked you to write that report that you hand wrote 3 weeks later, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was Terry Sanderson very appreciative of your assistance that day?
Yes, I remember him being very kind.
Yeah, do you understand he still is very appreciative of what you did?
I'm glad. Glad I could help him.
Okay. You said he was rattled on the hill.
Yes.
What is rattle? Well, does rattled mean disorientation?
That is my version of it, yes. That is how I would present that.
So is rattled or disorientation, is that a possible sign of a concussion?
Not in the way that I was presenting it, but I can see how it could come off that way.
Is it possible he could have had a concussion because he was rattled and disoriented?
It's my tests, we were coming out with no, but again, I don't diagnose, so down the line, someone else could come up with something different.
Someone who's qualified to diagnose a concussion?
Correct.
Okay, and you're not qualified to diagnose a concussion?
I do not diagnose.
Okay. You encouraged Terry Sanderson to go to the clinic, correct?
I did.
Can you, let's see. So your main goal was to stabilize him and focus on him. You did not investigate the collision matters, even though Craig Ramon said it was Gwyneth Paltrow who hit him from behind.
I did not chase that down, no.
You did not believe Craig Ramon.
When I come up on a collision that one party is gone from, I'm not going to go try and find that person. It's pretty impossible.
Unless it's someone's famous.
It could be, but it's sort of a hearsay thing at that point.
Just give me a moment, please. Thank you, Ms. Smith. That's all I have.
Hold on one second.
That's all. Thank you.
I just have one more, Your Honor.
Sure.
Ms. Smith, there was a question about you being asked to write those additional comments. Do you recall that?
I do.
Did you write those with any intention of covering up anything that you knew about this accident?
No.
Or covering for Ms. Paltrow because she's a celebrity?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Bueller?
just the opposite question. When you wrote those comments, you were trying to reveal that Ms. Paltrow was involved in this. At least her name was mentioned, right?
I was just writing down what I recalled.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Your Honor.
Okay. You're excused, but you may need to be called back again. So please don't discuss the case with anyone, and don't watch the proceedings. Thank you.
We'll now call Steve Graff. And I think he's out there, so we'll have to go grab him.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Graff. If you could walk right up here and be sworn in as a witness.
Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then take a seat in the witness stand, and then begin by, I guess, positioning the microphone and then stating and spelling your name.
I'm Steve Graff, Graff.
Thank you.
Your Honor, as we walked in, the witness told me that he is thirsty. Do you mind if I give him a drink?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you.
I got it. All right, Mr. Graff. Thank you for being here. We don't have much time, so you'll be quick. I first want to ask you whether you know about a man named Mr. Sanderson, Terry Sanderson.
I do.
And how do you know about him?
I know he was involved in a ski accident at Deer Valley in February of 16, and he has subsequently filed suit against originally Deer Valley and Gwyneth Paltrow.
And how do you know about this?
Well, I know about the accident beginning the day of the accident and have been involved in it off and on for the last 6 years.
Okay, and in what capacity did you learn about this accident in terms of professional life?
My professional life, the day of the accident, I spoke with Whitney Smith about it at the end of the day,
Okay.
about the accident.
And what did you learn from her? What was your understanding from your conversation with her?
It was just end of the day work in the ski patrol room as the patrol comes in. I'm usually around that area, so if they have questions about scheduling, just talk about the day, any of those type of things. And she was in the Empire First Aid Room for an extra long period of time, so questioned about that. And she said, yeah, the crazy thing is there was somebody there that said that Gwyneth Paltrow was involved.
Okay, anything else that you understood from your interactions with her?
That was the end of any interactions with that for a number of days.
Okay, with end of interactions with Miss Smith?
Yes.
And what was your role, your job at Deer Valley at that time?
At that time, I was the ski patrol manager for Deer Valley.
Okay, so you managed all of Miss Smith and her colleagues, making sure that they're organized, running the various runs so that they can help people that may be in trouble. Is that a good sort of layperson's
That's a pretty
description?
good description. There were 70 ski patrollers, managed staffing 6 different mountains, number of different ski patrol stations, first aid rooms, things of that nature on a daily basis.
Okay. And so after that assessment, or sorry, I shouldn't say assessment. I was saying that a bunch with Miss Smith. That interaction with Miss Smith. Did you have any other involvement in trying to determine what had happened in this collision?
Not that day, no. It wasn't until maybe a week to 10 days later that I saw a instructor comment form come in from Mr. Christiansen, and he had been with Gwyneth Paltrow that day, and he had listed that she was involved in a collision. And so I reached back out to Whitney and said, hey, there might be some validity to that. Do you mind giving us some more information on that?
I see. Because at first it wasn't clear that the claim about Ms. Paltrow was in fact true. Is that correct?
No, it was reported to me as just somebody in the background saying, beautiful blonde woman at Deer Valley must be Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay, got it. And did you do anything further to try and figure out if anybody else on the mountain, Deer Valley employees knew anything about the collision?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. Did you do anything later?
Yes.
And when was that?
Well, a lot of things happened. So chronologically, in the interest of time, I'll just kind of quickly go through how these things transpired as far as I'm aware. So I mentioned that, week to 10 days after the accident, noticed that there was an instructor comment card, verified that Gwyneth was there, asked Whitney to follow up on that, maybe a few more statements about what happened that day to add to her incident form. And then nothing for maybe a month or so. Sometime, March, April, I believe, John Gay, the director of skier services, received a letter from Mr. Sanderson. And in the letter, if I remember correctly, he was concerned that the skier responsibility code wasn't being applied evenly because of Ms. Paltrow's celebrity status. And he didn't mention in the letter to John, the director of skier services, that his employee yelled at him or anything like that in that particular letter. There was another follow-up letter, similar content, weeks after that one. And then there was a request for the contact information for Ms. Paltrow. And when we first got that request, we complied. How it typically goes, and it didn't go any differently in this case, is that we reached out to Ms. Paltrow and said, Mr. Sanderson has requested your information. We're giving it to him. We reached out to Mr. Sanderson, said, here's Gwyneth information. We're giving it to her, as we would with any other case.
Got it. I see. And what about any attempts to find, well, I should back up and ask you some foundational questions. In learning about this incident, did you ever hear about any ski patrollers coming on the scene of the actual collision?
Yeah, that was later that we started digging more into that. We supplied that information. It wasn't until 2019, I believe, when we were served, and we really started digging into what had happened and getting statements from people and depositions and all of that. And through that process, we dug a lot deeper into, I believe it was Chris Jansen that said a ski patroller came by the scene while they were still there and everybody was present, or mostly present. And so we looked into that, and there were two potential people that matched the description. I believe one of them was on Empire and one of them was on Flagstaff. Bandana Ski Run connects both of them. So we reached out to both of those. They didn't recollect skiing by and asking anybody if they needed help. But that's not unusual. That, on any given day, it's probably more unusual on a ski run that I don't ask somebody if they're okay. It's just very common occurrence. You go, you see someone standing there, someone looking at a map, someone picking themselves up. It's very common to say, "Are you okay?" And yep, everything's okay, and then moving on. And there's no documentation of that. It's just routine business.
I see. And were there patrol logs that were connected with this? I think the jury's heard some description of logs that are kept about who's on which run in terms of the patrol people. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. There's logs on every mountain, and not every run is logged, but if a ski patroller goes down a run, they come back. They're like, yep, I did Bandana at 11:24, and they would write that down and put their initials on that.
Got it. I believe I have those logs, which are defendants exhibit 26A and through C, and I don't believe that we have published these, so I would ask for permission to publish these and admit them.
And how have they been marked for identification?
Defendants exhibit 26A through C.
Through C?
Yes.
Okay, any objection?
Just a sec, Your Honor. Didn't need to find it.
Here, we see, I think this, is that, this with the member control line? No objection.
26A through C, defense exhibit is received.
Okay, so I'll publish it. It should be on that screen for you, Mr. Graff. Do you see it?
I do now.
Okay, is that the log we're talking about?
Yes, this is the Flagstaff patrol log. This isn't the section I'm talking about. It's a 2-page log.
Okay, so maybe
This is it. This is the
26B, is that
Correct.
the log, or do I have to keep going?
So this would be the run log. So you see where it says opening run, run check. Obviously, a lot more runs are done than that. Ski patrollers typically do more than a couple runs a day. But they're trying to make sure that all the runs get checked. So on this particular one, and as it pertains to this, we're looking for bandana. And it's at the very top. And,
Here at the top,
yep.
I
And
see.
it looks like 11:40, and then there's another time and a couple initials in there.
Okay, got it. And then, just for the sake of completeness, then there's 26C. I don't know if that makes a difference here to you. Was that part of your? Was this record a part of your attempt to figure out who those patrollers were?
Yes, this was part of us trying to get all the information we could about this.
And this 26C document, does it offer anything additional?
If you
I can go
zoom
I
in,
can go down
out,
to,
zoom out, yeah. So this is sweep, so that's after the accident, so it doesn't offer anything additional there. The page that you showed previously
Mm-hmm.
has
Okay.
names of the people that were on the mountain that day.
Is that this page?
That's this page, correct.
I see.
So at the top there,
At the top here. Okay.
yep. So Caleb, Jess, Whitney, and Tom were there. Steve Campbell was the snowmobiler.
And
If I
you oh,
remember
sorry, go
correctly,
ahead.
I asked Tom specifically because I saw his initials in that log. But not only did I look at Flagstaff, but knowing that Bandana is a connecting run to Lady Morgan and Empire, we looked at those patrollers as well and asked them if anybody on the mountain that day recalls saying, "Are you okay?" to some people on Bandana, and we didn't get any affirmative response to that.
Given your experience with managing patrollers and responding to various incidents, if there had been an incident where someone was unconscious for a long time, would you expect to have heard about it?
Yes, most definitely.
And would you expect those patrollers to remember it if you asked them a number of years later?
Yes,
And they did not
they did not.
in this case? Okay.
Even if the person wasn't necessarily injured but wanted a ride or had an equipment problem, or if there was anything other than "no, I'm okay," it most likely would have ended up in this log.
I see. And it does not. You've reviewed these, and you don't
Does
see any.
not.
You don't see any indication of any such event.
No.
Okay. And do you know who Eric Christensen is? I think you mentioned him earlier.
I do know who Eric Christensen is.
And did you ever receive a report that he had yelled at Mr. Sanderson?
I believe that was in one of the claims in the lawsuit, but never in our investigation.
Okay, so you had heard about it in terms of claims in a lawsuit, but never aside from that.
Never since. No.
Got it. So there wasn't a patroller that said, "Hey, we need to respond to Mr. Christensen. He's not treating our customers properly."
Right. In our investigation of all of our employees that were involved or could have been involved, that's never come up. That question, that no one ever said yes, that there was yelling or even raised voices or anything.
And if that had been reported, how do you respond to those things? How do you, investigate an incident like that, maybe discipline employees?
Yeah, I've been a leader and manager of employees for nearly 30 years now, and if any one of my employees verbally assaulted a guest or yelled at them or behaved in any way that was inappropriate, we would definitely take action with that.
And no action was taken against Mr. Christensen?
No action was taken, no.
And I understand, if I'm correct, you're no longer in that patrol manager position, is that right?
That's right. I was the ski patrol manager, and in 2017 I became the director of mountain operations, and in 2022 I'm the vice president of mountain operations.
Okay, so is it fair to say you're familiar with how Deer Valley responds to employees that have, that misbehave or that engage in behavior that is inappropriate towards guests?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay. And then what about, are you aware of how Deer Valley deals with celebrities on the ski slopes?
I am aware of how Deer Valley deals with celebrities on the ski slopes.
And how is that? Do they treat them any differently than other people?
No. There's no reason for Deer Valley as a company and broadly tell our employees about when celebrities are at Deer Valley. The only time in my 29 years or so at Deer Valley that I've known about celebrities is when we think there might be some disruption to our business, right? Like paparazzi or things of that nature. I can only think of 2 incidences in that time frame that there was a reason why we would want some of our employees to know about celebrities being on the mountain. If it was, heads of state or members of Congress or sitting presidents or past presidents, with security details, we're usually informed of those things, but not celebrities.
To your knowledge, did Deer Valley employees, executives, anyone involved with Deer Valley do anything to cover up the facts of this case to protect Gwyneth Paltrow?
Absolutely not.
And were you even aware that Ms. Paltrow was on the slopes that day?
I wasn't aware of it until I read the instructor comments that just happened to mention that my student was Gwyneth Paltrow and was involved in a collision. And I recalled that, hey, Whitney was on an accident a week or so ago, and there was somebody there that said the same thing. So that's when those 2 pieces came together for me.
And does Deer Valley have any position on what occurred in terms of the collision, who hit who?
No, there's with the varying statements, there's different statements about what happened, and so we as a company don't have a position on who's at fault.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Sykes?
Judge, I've got more than 7 minutes. You want out the jury go early tonight, or should I? Why don't you start? Start, okay. Each. See you again.
Nice to see you, Mr. Sykes.
We know each other from other cases, don't we?
We know each other, yes.
Excuse me. This is the log that was referred to a minute ago, 26A. Can you see it there?
I do.
9:58 a.m. skier assist. What was that next word? Can you read that?
Well, knowing that it was on Flagstaff Mountain, I'm going to say it's Sidewinder.
Okay.
Sidewinder is a run there.
Next one is 10:36 lost something boot, is that right?
It says lost boulder, bad boot.
Yeah.
Goes back to what I was saying
a
before.
skier has a bad boot on, was it bandana?
That would be lost boulder, bad boot.
Okay, lost boulder, a bad boot, and that gets logged in,
Correct.
right? And a skier collision on bandana doesn't merit a login at, let's say, 11:55 a.m. A collision doesn't even mention get a mention.
Yeah, that goes back to what I said before, that if it was equipment like bad boot or somebody needed an assist, like maybe they needed a ride down, it would get logged. But if the people said, I'm okay, it wouldn't.
Okay, at 12:02 p.m. now, Whitney Smith, it says Whitney there, is, and a possible 10:50 is a collision, right?
Possible 1050 is an accident.
An accident, okay. And bandana, okay? And she notes skier collision, disorientation.
Correct.
Now, you investigate these things for Deer Valley. Is it your position that maybe 7 minutes, just 7 minutes or so, after that collision, he's disoriented, but at the time of the collision, he's not disoriented? Is that your position?
I don't have a position on that.
Well, take one. I mean, 5 to 7 minutes later, Whitney Smith, who has no skin in the game except she's employed by you, okay, notes disorientation on her report. And she noticed it later, by the way, as you noticed.
Right?
And you're trying to tell this jury that just 7 minutes before, this individual wasn't disoriented?
Is there a question there?
Yeah.
What's the question?
Are you trying to tell the jury that 7 minutes before, Terry Sanderson wasn't disoriented when the other two guys stopped by,
Your Honor, may we?
who didn't log it?
I wasn't trying to tell the
Just
jury anything.
got a request, yes. You may proceed, Mr. Sykes.
You remember the question?
No.
Okay. Are you telling this jury of the good men and women of Summit County that maybe 5 to 7 minutes after this collision, it's noted here, I assume by Whitney Smith, or someone noted it, that there was a collision and there was disorientation, and that 5 to 7 minutes before that, there was no disorientation? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. On this form at 12:04, Whitney said there was a skier collision and the person presented with disorientation. I don't know where you're getting the 5 to 7 minutes earlier. What are you referring to?
Well, the accident was logged, the crash was logged at 11:55.
By who?
Well, it's in one of the records. I think it was Eric Christensen. 11:55. You weren't aware of that?
There's a time frame there. I know that at 12:02, Whitney was dispatched, and I don't see the screen anymore, but I believe it was 12:04. She was on scene.
Well, okay.
So Chris Jansen said he was on scene. Yeah, that was right. 5 minutes
11:55.
before then, and he didn't
Yeah.
notice disorientation.
Yeah. All right. And you're, no. Have you ever had a broken rib?
Yes,
It's pretty painful, isn't it?
incredibly.
Very painful, incredibly
Yes.
painful. Have you ever had 4 broken ribs? 4.
No.
Okay? Terry was diagnosed at the VA with 4 broken ribs the very next day. Okay? Now, is it reasonable, and you've had a long history in skiing and with Deer Valley, long illustrious history, right?
Yes.
Okay? Do you think that a man who just had 4 broken ribs, 4, okay, would tell a ski patrol guy who came by that he was okay? Is that reasonable to you?
Yes, that's reasonable.
4 broken ribs.
I've seen that happen over
Okay.
and over again.
Over and over again, people with 4 broken ribs tell a ski patrol that they're okay.
Maybe not with 4 broken ribs, but quite frequently people say they're okay. They want to be okay.
Okay? Let me ask you, Pete, would you find the report? Which is it? Okay, now, you didn't see the crash, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you have no personal knowledge of how serious it was?
No, I don't.
You're aware that Terry Sanderson has a witness who's not even a close friend, just a meet-up buddy, that says that Gwyneth Paltrow hit him in the back. You aware of that?
I'm aware of that, yes.
Okay. Does that count for anything in your opinion?
It's part of all of this, part
Alright.
of this investigation.
Deer Valley, however, takes no position one way or the other on how the collision occurred.
No, there's differing opinions or statements on what happened.
But
that
Deer Valley takes no position.
we don't take any position, no.
And you don't give celebrities any advantage.
No.
in these kinds of- Okay, now, you aware that she paid almost $9,000 for 2 days of skiing? You aware of that?
I believe I saw that somewhere in the records. I think it might be overly inflated, but somewhere in there. That doesn't
Well,
sound
that's what she said.
unreasonable.
Okay. Now, that's a lot of money to pay for 2 days, isn't it?
It's,
All right.
Deer Valley costs a lot of money.
Mr. Sykes, I hate to interrupt you, but we can either recess now, or if you just have a few minutes of questioning, you could finish.
Well, I hate to hold the jury late. Why don't we recess and I'll finish tomorrow?
All right.
Is that okay?
I have an objection to finishing tomorrow.
Why don't we address that after the jury's excused?
Thank you.
Members of the jury, we're going to recess now until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So remember my admonition not to talk about the case with anyone, not to do any of your own investigation. And if you happen to look at the television or listen to the radio or go online, please avoid or do avoid reading anything or listening to anything about the case. So thank you. Hopefully we won't have a storm in the morning. Thank you. You can step down. Mr. Owens?
I've excused my client. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Yes, thank you. Your Honor, the plaintiffs still have not rested. That was supposed to take place Friday at the end of the day. I had Apple Martin, Moses Martin, and Brad Falchuk all ready to go this morning, and they were unable to testify. As I understand it, plaintiffs will not oppose Apple and Moses having their deposition transcripts read into the evidence. Can we confirm?
Mr. Sykes?
That's correct, as long as our additions are added, which I've given counsel.
Thank you. And Brad Falchuk is still, we still haven't made a decision. We may need to read his transcript in too. We have 2 full days tomorrow.
The court hasn't made a decision about what?
Oh, sorry. Brad Falchuk is the husband. With me?
And what decision do I need to make about that?
I'm sorry. We,
You need to make a decision. Okay.
you, I'm speaking through a mask, which makes it hard. Tomorrow, Tuesday, can I give my lineup?
What's the lineup for tomorrow?
McMahon,
That's
Or
for
you're
them to
giving the
tell us.
lineup. You're giving the lineup. Okay, go ahead.
We're starting with, finish up Mr.
Graff.
We're gonna nod.
my objection to, we're already terribly behind.
Just a minute. Is Mr. Graff in the room here? Maybe you better run out and grab him and make sure he's going to be here at 9 o'clock in the morning. Somebody from the plaintiff's side.
So 4 of our witnesses have been thrown off, just to let you know, because we had 7 planned for today.
And
We
that's
can't-
your choice, counsel, to throw them off. So each side gets 50% of the trial time, and you're making a decision about how to allocate that time.
Based on the assumption that plaintiffs would be done on Friday.
And that's between the two of you.
Okay, I'm not complaining, I'm just putting this on the record. And so we have 8 experts, 4 tomorrow, most out of state, 4 on Wednesday. So we're lumping in now people onto Thursday morning. Anyway,
You see that I've got in the time for Thursday morning, it's 2 hours and 7.75, 2.75 hours or something like that. That includes closing arguments.
wow, that means 0.75 hours
Well,
on Tuesday morning, or Thursday morning.
It's just an estimate of what's available. If we take up a lot of time in out of jury hearings, that'll get smaller.
And you're running an excellent court, but I'm just saying an hour for closing on both sides means essentially no evidence on Thursday morning.
Well, you can start your closings earlier than that. It just depends on when you rest your case and when the plaintiff rests their case. But your half time includes your closing argument.
See, thank you for telling me that. I hadn't focused on that. So you envision the jury commencing deliberations at about noon?
That would be in a perfect world.
Okay.
And I understand, we don't live in a perfect world. And so if they have to be charged a little bit later than that, they have to be charged a little bit later than that.
Thank you.
But that would be in a perfect world.
All right. So my concern, sorry to be so long on this. We have Michael McMahon, a physician assistant, Paul Bogger, our ski expert, Irvin Scher, our biomechanical expert, and Stephen Edgley, our neurorehabilitation expert. They are not flexible. So my concern with having Steve Graff come back tomorrow morning is that it's going to throw off these folks that are not flexible.
Okay.
I would rather Steve Graff come back, for instance, Thursday morning, so that we can get our experts who are time.
Sure.
Thanks.
So you've got an expert that's ready to go at 9 a.m. in the morning?
So Michael McCahan is actually not our expert, so I may have misspoken. He was the treating physician assistant at the Instacare.
Sure.
And he is,
Ready at 9 a.m.?
yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, Your Honor, I'll probably only have about 10 to 12 minutes to finish this up.
Why
I
don't we,
could wait, but I'd rather just get it done.
I realize that, but we do have some professionals that we need to make some accommodation for, and so why don't we wait with completing Mr. Graff's testimony until we can fit it in sometime a little bit later? Maybe later tomorrow, or if you want to schedule him for a specific time, we can do that as well.
Steve Graff has flexibility to show up anytime.
I don't know.
He's not
I
busy.
don't
It's only
control
the
Steve
best
Graff.
snow season in the world. This year of Salt Lake City, but
And
yeah, he's not sure not busy.
I would add that Michael McMahon doesn't remember the treating Terry Sanderson. It's just a record review, and there's very little he would have to offer because he has no recollection of ever seeing the plaintiff.
I think he will be short.
So why don't you speak with counsel for Deer Valley and find out when you can schedule Mr. Graff, when makes sense to schedule him. Can you give him some blocks of time when he could schedule that?
Yes, I mean,
So if we can hold them to 10 minutes, we can live with it.
In the
What we
morning, tomorrow morning?
Yes. What we can't live with is it's 10 minutes and now it's 2 hours.
Well, are you gonna do another 10 or 15 of redirect?
James is on it.
Probably not.
I will commit to 10 minutes.
All right, then we'll call him in the morning.
Mr. Graff did say that he's available.
Okay, so why don't we get him back in the morning, and we'll even try, we'll start as soon as the jury's here. If they're all assembled at 10:02, we'll start.
And Judge, just for the record, I've been in lots of trials, lots of jury trials. I've never seen so many sidebars in a case as this one.
Is that a
Requested by
compliment?
the defense.
Is that a compliment or a criticism?
That's a compliment.
You're working very hard, Judge. Thanks.
Anything else, counsel?
Thank you, Judge.
All right, so
Thank you,
come
Judge.
early. The jury has been asked to be here at 8:45. If they're all assembled, we'll start.
8:45?
Yeah, let's start it then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give you your time remaining. Or I'll give the time that you've taken and my anticipated time remaining.
Right, thank you, that'd be helpful.